Okay, can you hear me there? All right. So let's get on and have a bit of a look at the course structure. First time in 17 years that we do this in 2 weeks, so I plan it the best I can, and I think it's going to fit, and the times are going to be okay, but it may just be that occasionally we go over and we have to finish the following day. It may just be that we are short and we finish too early, and we'll start with a new topic immediately after that, even if it didn't have to happen until the following day. Okay? It's a bit of a trial and error. See how we go. Okay, course structure. Let me tell you, some of you who don't know me yet, let me see how we go here. Slideshow from current slide. Okay, that is me, Carlos Moncada. I am Chileno, right? Been in Australia for 33 years now. It's my home. And I've been, since I arrived, in the oil and gas industry, 33 years, 24 years in the multinationals, in BHP and Woodside. And then when Woodside didn't require my services anymore in 2005, I branched alone. Right? There's been enough activity in the industry to be profitably employed without having to work for a large company. And it's been very rewarding, and it's very interesting because you get to do a lot of things that you wouldn't have otherwise if you've been in a big company. Having said that, to become a consultant one day, you've got to do the hard yards on the big companies. You've got to work 15, 20 years on the big ones, so you know what you're talking about, and then you can get out and do your own thing and get paid. All right? Okay? So my mobile is there to be used. I would be pleased if people contact me, right? Not only towards the end, what do I do with my assignment, or I want an extension, which is an absolute capital sin. That doesn't happen with me. But do contact me. Do contact me early. That is my email, is there to be used. Try not to, although occasionally I will, check the university email. It's cumbersome because I've got to log on, and if I don't log on every day, I may not see important messages, and I may miss something that's important for you. But if you email me on this one, cameron@inet.net.au, I see that every day, several times a day, things flash on my phone. Okay? Rightio. Now, what are we going to do for marking? Are you interested in this part, or should we just skip it? How do we... I don't think we need to skip this. Okay, we will have a look at it then. Right. This is what we're going to do. There's going to be an exam. This course is about the exam. You pass the exam, we would say you passed the course. Okay? Because the rest of the activities are not difficult, but you have to do them. Right? So my experience is that you are going to get all the points and the marks you need in everything that's ancillary, but the exam is the important thing here. I need to understand that you understood what I had to tell you. Okay? And in the exam, you have to score 40%. If you don't score 40%, doesn't matter if you had 100% in all the assignments and all the ancillaries, I can't pass you. And if that happens, you end up the subject with a 40%. Has that ever happened? No. Everyone gets more than 40%. Why does everyone get more than 40%? Stephanie, why does everyone get more than 40%? Because exams are easy. Are they? No, the exams are not easy, Mama. Stephanie just let me down. But what I can promise you is that half of it will be multiple choice, and the other half will be things to do, with very clear results that you need to get to. But in exchange for you taking this hard challenge of putting all your money on an exam, 50% of that exam will be something we have done in class. You study your class materials. You You do your exercises. You do the exercise that I'm going to give you to take home to do there. I will do identical exercises. If not, one or two of the same ones that we have done in class. So I don't think it gets any easier, right? But with that I'm saying I need you to look at the material, because everything on this unit is what we do in class. There's text and whatever you can. I mean, there's lots of things to read, but that's the way it goes. Okay, so where do the rest of the points come from? There will be 25% coming from the major assignment. What is this major assignment? It will be an at-risk model. Anyone doesn't know what at-risk is? Anyone knows what at-risk is? Anyone knows? Ever heard of it? Ever heard of crystal ball? Crystal ball, you know, the magician lady? At-risk is a computer simulation package for Monte Carlo. Anyone heard of Monte Carlo? At-risk is an add-on to Excel, right? So that's where you're going to do your assignment on, right? You're going to have to come up with a model, an at-risk model, that will have a few variables that have to be subject to probability, right? So you can't say, I know that my oil in place is 800 million barrels. Now, your oil in place will have to be a probabilistic distribution, a range of possible values with or described by a probability distribution that you're going to have to justify to me why are you using that type of probability for that type of variable, and why are you using that sort of range that you've chosen as a minimum, as a most likely, and a maximum. This is the kind of thing. Why am I asking you that? Because that's what we do in the industry, right? That's what we do. Explorationists, geologists, you know, prospect evaluation is all about that. It's not difficult. The software is dead easy. Dead easy. You will have mastered it in 15 minutes, right? But we will go and we'll do it. Now, when is the exam? The exam is on the 19th of April, I believe. So it's about a month after the last lecture for the exam. I would like to have the major assignment back to me a week and a half before that, so I have the chance to mark it. I don't want you to go to the exam without having the mark for the assignment. Okay? So, software, what do we do with software? Well, the stereo license now, there will be 30 or more, there will be 60 licenses, but still could happen that you go to the lab and somebody somewhere, you know, is using it and you can't use it. Well, I suggest 15 days before you need to submit to me, log on to the Palisade software website and download the suite on your computer. It's free for 15 days, right? So you can finish it off in your own homes. I don't think I have the, but it's called Palisade, right? I guess the website must be .com. It could be something else, but just search for Palisade, okay? Now, more on the software. The software's got like 7 or even 8 different pieces of software. It's got the precision tree, which is about decision trees. We will use that too on the first week. That's the lab that we're going to do in the first week. It's got, of course, at-risk, which is Monte Carlo. It's got neural networks. It's got influence diagrams, and it's got another 3 pieces of software. You don't have to use that just on economics. I use it because it's very useful for economics and exploration and all that, but it's used in all walks of life, in all industries, just about for anything, right? So it's a very useful skill to have. We will have some in-class type of quizzes, okay? Tests. Because I think I'm not allowed to use the word please. Okay? How many? How many can we have in 2 weeks to make it meaningful? I'd like to have at least 4. I don't think it would be fair to you to finish any lecture and by the end of it sit you at a quiz for that lecture. But if you haven't understood something, it robs you of the time that you can have at home to try to understand what the hell Carlos said, So maybe, the following day, right? Not the quiz. Say we were going to have a quiz about what we talked today. Well, let's not have it today at the end of the class. That would be a little bit disadvantageous, I guess, but maybe have it tomorrow, right? So maybe 2 quizzes each week, and we could have 4 of those. They'll be of the easy type. There will be a multiple choice, or there will be a true or false, perhaps. We do it in 10 minutes. We're all done. We go home. Yep. Forum participation. I don't want any of you missing, right? I need to know that somebody's not upset of doing something else, So I will put at least, those of you that had the last course with me, you know what I'm talking about. I will put at least a couple of things, issues, subjects on the website, on our theming thing on LMS. And I will want all of you to contribute to make your commentary, to write your take on it. There's no wrong and there's no right, but I need you to do it, right? It's a participation thing. Obviously, it's not that good when you say someone has put, like 80 words and it's very smart what he or she has written, and the other person participates and says, I agree. Not that good, is it? Okay. So I need speak up, say what you think. I'm going to laugh. Sometimes I'm going to go and have a glass of wine to celebrate laughing, what you just said was ridiculous, but I will not tell you. I will not come back and tell you anything, right? I'm just kidding. I don't laugh about what you wrote. But now, there's some people who have put some very smart things that I haven't thought of, on specific areas. Okay? Occasionally, I smile about something, but nothing serious. Is it clear how we are going to do this? Any questions on major assignment or in-class quizzes? Yes? Yes, they are. If I stay near the microphone, they will be recorded. But what do? There's no remote, and you know me, I walk around. So I will try to stay here, guys. Sorry. Okay? May have to sit down as well. Okay. So, no supplementary exam offered. Look, for the record, I'm not here to fail anyone. I am a lecturer from the industry. I'm not here to come up and achieve, degrees of excellency, that are second to none. I need you guys to learn what I have spoken about and to more or less demonstrate to me back that you have understood and you can use the abilities, that you have learned. Having said that, last semester I had to fail 5 students, and I was dirty about it. Because it means either I didn't teach well, right, or what happens out of 28 or 29. So that's not a small amount. It's the most I have to fail ever. But then I look at what other students have done, and I see their final marks, high 70s, mid to high 80s, a couple of 90-somethings, 93, 94% average. I said, well, there's nothing wrong with the way that this has been conveyed, because some students really, have absolutely got it. So I don't know what to do with the ones that didn't pass. It's got to do about, they just lost too many points. They didn't participate in the forums often enough. Some of the work was repetitive. May I ask, are all of you have degrees, don't you? Yes? Is there anyone that has not got a degree here? So you've all been at universities and are already graduates, are you? So you know how to study. You've already passed, university with a whole curriculum of courses and things. Occasionally, I come by some very juvenile, work, very, very on the shallow side. And it's not about, okay, let's work out the way of passing them. We're not doing them a favor if we do so. I need you guys to come up to work and be able to deliver. Okay? That's what we are after. I mean, the person that used to do the investment management course, which is my other course, I was in Woodside. They gave me a call and said, Carlos, would you take the investment management course at University of Western Australia? I said, yes. Well, here's the notes of the previous teacher. Don't even remember the name, so I don't have anyone to talk bad about. But half of that course was, trying to arrive to work out the formula for net present value. And I go like, how does that work in the industry when I need to do a project valuation in about 3 hours and my boss wants it ready tomorrow? Does he want to know where the formula came from? It doesn't make sense. So I came in with 3 formulas. Expected monetary value, right? Net present value, and internal rate of return, which are the ones that I'm interested on. And I said, these are the 3 formulas, and this is the level of difficulty that we're going to have. But you know what? We use this 95% of the time in the industry, so therefore this is what I need you to understand. Changed it. The courses are about how to do it, about the war stories, about the 80% of the stuff that I have done that's failed. I'm coming here to tell you my war experiences. I got $15 billion worth of monetary analysis, under my belt, of which 80% has failed. It's not wrong. No, it's failed. It didn't achieve the mark. We couldn't buy the project we were looking for. We couldn't sell the project we wanted to sell. We couldn't get a project over the line to get it developed. No, the exploration well didn't get drilled because it didn't pass. No, all the analysis was correctly done, but there's $12 billion of my effort that didn't get anywhere. Right? So you get a lot of learnings from those, more than the $3 billion that got somewhere, right? And I'm here to tell you the war stories. Some people, does anyone get insulted when I talk about war stories? Because depending on our backgrounds, we could be coming from parts of the world in which you don't want to talk about war, right? War story is jargon. It doesn't have anything to do with war. It's got to do with the practical things that I learned throughout my career, the real stories. So I should not call them war stories, but that is a jargon. You're going to hear war stories, talking to people out there. They are not about war. Please tell me if someone feels not happy about me saying something like that. Okay? So here you are. I've got a nearly 28 years experience with an 80% failure on my CV. My God, you want to walk out of here, don't you? No, exactly the opposite. You want to know what went wrong, so you don't do it. I can tell you that. I can definitely tell you that. Okay. Rightio. What else? No text required. There's heaps of stuff there, but I will point you at articles, and some books that have become basically the cornerstone of what we do. The other do's are arrive to class on time, because I am not sure we will have time to do everything I want to do. Now, it may be that we miss something there. Do review your materials daily. Please do. Ask questions during class time and outside of it. If you don't ask, I will ask you to ask me. Right? And I will pick a volunteer to ask me something, okay? Work hard on your assignment. Prepare well for the exam. Do not, here's where we get serious, Ask for assignment extensions. It won't happen. We can't do it. It doesn't exist. Don't know what's that. I don't speak English. I don't know what an assignment extension means. Someone has to translate that for me. Okay? I think I was clear enough on that one. Do not do individual work in teams, although there will be things that we will do in teams. Plagiarize. The university is coming down harder every semester on plagiarizing, you know. Do not get on your knees and beg for additional marks or anything like that, because it doesn't look good. No one's done it, but it wouldn't look good, okay? So the last thing, okay, what do we think we're going to try to fit? Sorry, I'm going to publish this if you want to, to have it in writing. Those are the do's and the don'ts, right? What we are intending to talk about is, I'm going to try to fit 10 topics in 10 days. We don't really have 10 days, we've got 8 days, because 2 of those are lab sessions, right? So topics is anything from an hour and a half to 2-3 hours. I mean, they are different. They tackle different things. Just to honor, I'm going to stay here so this gets recorded. Just to honor what the title of the unit is, which is the hydrocarbon economy, I have written a unit about Australia's, energy balance, energy picture, which I think is a bit more focused than perhaps what we would have wanted to otherwise hear. I didn't want to make it too general. I didn't want to talk about climate change, or I mean, we all know that. No, we kind of get bombarded with those sorts of things. But we have turned all the rest of this course into a decision-making thing, techniques for oil and gas, and we're going to show and do and analyze the techniques that we actually use. What the guys do at their desks. We're going to try to have a few practicals, exercises whenever possible. We're going to give you exercises to take home. Do them. They are not for filing, because those are your points in the exam. I promise 50% of the exam will be stuff that you've done. I may change one, leave the same exercise and change the numbers, but the exam is there to be passed. Okay? Please pass it. Yes? Okay. Topic 3, decision trees. We use decision trees a lot with expected monetary value, especially on what has to do with exploration. Now, how to do exploration prospects. Those of you that did the course with me last semester will notice that I have moved a lecture from there to here, right? Feel free not to come when we have to do the exploration, expected monetary value lecture, because you have done it before, right? But that lecture will sit in this unit now, and it's been taken from the investment management. I will expand on something else in that unit, okay? So you realize that after 2 years of this program, there's been a bit of an analysis. There's been a bit of figuring out what units are hitting the mark, which ones aren't. And this unit is good enough to say, we're not going to wait another 4 or 5 years, to do a little bit of a reshuffling. We're going to do it now. We've got a second part of decision trees there as well, which is, flipping the trees and doing a few other things, preparing you for the lab. At the lab, we are going to do an exercise. First, we're going to get you to build a simple decision tree there, so you can get familiar with the commands. That'll be a 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and then we're going to ask you to get a little bit more cute, about what we're going to do that, and try to work out some decisions. But it will all be basically itemized, so you will have a recipe, list to follow, right? Once we do that, some of you may finish that in 2 hours, 2.5 hours, go home if you want, right? Some of them who want to do the whole 4 hours, it's fine, okay? Then, because all of this is generally about money, we'll do a short one on project valuation. Nothing of the depth of what we've done in investment analysis, but enough to tell you, that projects are ranked by value, and they are measured by value, and there's some techniques to do it. That's a shorty, maybe an hour and 20 minutes of that, and so on. We will have a practical for that too. Then we'll talk about the basics of Monte Carlo simulation. That's on Friday, right? What is it all about? I'll demonstrate a little exercise, a very pedestrian one that I have on my old computer, about 10 years old, right? And I still got the software there. And we will talk about the exercise on Monday. The exercise on Monday, which will be the lab, will be one about working the oil in place of a certain oil and gas accumulation, starting by all the variables that are involved, porosity, gross rock volume, formation volume factor, and that I understand for some of you mean nothing because you are not from the industry. This is your first semester in the program, but you will get to know more about it, okay? So, sorry, you will just have to wear it, and in a semester from now, perhaps, this is what Carlos was talking about, okay? Then on Monday is the lab, the same thing. Then there's repeat for those of you that have done the other course of the Exploration Economics lecture. Feel free to come to that or not with a practical. Then we will do value of information. This is very topical. The bigger companies do it. That's also based on the decision tree type of technique. So we will revert to decision trees for that lecture there. But say, how much are you prepared to pay for additional information that reduces the probability of failure or increases the probability of success or whatever you are measuring, right? How much you are willing to pay for that, right? And there's a technique that you work out how much it is. And then a practical. Then again, on the back of decision trees, we will, time permits, do some real options. Has anyone heard about real options? In other careers, perhaps, and anyone from the financial world, real options. They started as means of mixing portfolios and all that kind of stuff for the stock exchange. Purely financial thing. It evolved, and now it's something that is being explored very seriously in the oil and gas industry, as a decision-making sort of technique add-on coupled with decision trees. Because decision trees, although it's good, it's got many shortcomings. So, therefore, other things are invited into the picture. And then reserves recognition, again, a lecture that some of you have seen. It's a straight transfer from the other unit to this unit. You will see how much of the Monte Carlo we've done on previous days applies to the reserves that we're going to look at on that day. So, look, fully rebuilding we are, but I think it's nice from the unit that they gave me a call and invited me. So, look, there must be something that's going okay. Okay? Shall we? Silvanus, shall we? Okay. My man, it's been almost a year without seeing you. Okay, let's do this. It's strange for me to be sitting down and doing this, but let's do it. One of the ideas of doing this in a number of days is that we're going to try to do these courses professionally. The university's got some memorandums of understanding out there, and it would want to offer elsewhere in Asia, in Mexico, and some other places, some courses earmarked, and you can't go to another country and do a course in 13 weeks. You've got to do it short and sharp. So, I've always been interested in that. So this and investment management, for those of you that have already done it, is now going on a 2-week format at the end of the year. Okay, so where are we? Topic 1. This topic is about the energy picture. I left it there because of the title of the unit. the title of the unit is Hydrocarbon Economy. I said I got to honor that somehow. Was it totally my choice? No. I said, I got to write something about this and say, oh God, I mean, why do I have to do it? So I started picking some subjects, and you know what? I liked it. And I learned something. You know, when I write things for you, I have the opportunity to learn some things as well, and I learned some things that I want to share with you. Okay? So I think it's worthwhile having a look at. Okay. Any questions? Have I scared you? Have I enthused you? Have I bored you? What have I done to you? There's got to be some impression there. It's just like, gee, what is this guy on about? Sylvanus, you know, you can tell him, okay? It's fine, mate.
Why this unit doesn't show up on elements?
What is this unit doesn't show on? So you haven't seen any of the things that I have loaded a hell of a lot of material yesterday, and on Saturday, the first 4 topics are already up. I was there with Zach Amann on Friday when he made it available to everyone. Can I make a phone call? This is important.
It's available now.
Sorry?
It's available now.
It's available now.
Yeah,
Okay.
so like basically at 3 o'clock it seems to become available.
So you saw some material?
I'll pull it up now, but yeah,
Okay.
it wasn't there this morning.
Right. I wanted you to already have read something. Well, yes and no. Sorry, having said, before we start, there's one paper I loaded that is about probabilistics. Brackets, Murtha. The author is a gentleman called whatever, James Murtha, M-U-R-T-H-A. We need probability understanding in this course, but I don't have the time to teach it. For that, go any probability course, try to understand how to arrive to histograms, you know, how to build the histograms from a population of data, you know, and nothing too deep. I have given you a summary of 15, 16 or 17 pages of a probability varnish oriented to the oil and gas industry, which is just a scan from a book written by this person, okay? You must read that, or you may flounder a little bit on your understanding on what you're doing on Monte Carlo. So by Thursday, when we meet on Friday, please have a good understanding of probabilities, you know, and that document will actually help you. Okay? So we're a bit under pressure. Sylvanus, no, the problem may be solved. I think it is. Yeah? Okay? All right. Okay. So what about oil and gas? It's a changing industry. I've been at it for about 30 years, right? And when I joined BHP Petroleum in the 80s, there were a lot of discoveries. BHP alone was drilling sometimes 2 or 3 exploration wells at the same time. Right? And we didn't even have personal computers. We had a mainframe with terminals on our desks. But we could log on onto a certain area there, we could see the daily progress of the drilling of these exploration wells. And when things were getting close to target depth, the whole company, every employee, even the computing guys, were all looking at, is that well going to hit the mark? Is that going to be another discovery? Well, there's not that much drilling going on now, and the drilling that goes on now doesn't find the same sort of volumes as often as it used to. So it finds less often there are discoveries, and very seldomly, you know, multi-100 million barrels like we used to chase. We used to chase anything from 500, 800, 1 billion barrels of oil is what we were used to. Now we've even developed projects with less than 30 million barrels, you know, 20 million barrels or something like that, which is very small biggies. Things have changed. So there are fewer elephants. Technology improvements have allowed greater access. We are drilling in unprecedented water depths now. Most of the stuff we used to do in Australia was 100 to 150 meters. In the Timor Sea, you could almost send a diver out there to drill the wells. We're joking. And, maybe some other places of Western Australia up to 500 meters perhaps or so on. Now, 3,000, almost 4,000 meters is not surprising. The Gulf of Mexico, as it goes away, for instance, from shore, gets deeper and deeper. Well, they drill there. 3,500 meters water depth. That's 3.5 kilometers. So technology is allowing things, but it's obviously more expensive. Things cost more to do now. We are producing new types of hydrocarbons. Talk about gas. Coal seam gas and all those kind of things. We weren't doing much of that at all in those early days. There are new types of deposits. They get exploited using new production techniques. All this advance comes at a high cost. Nothing we can do about it. As well, environmental awareness by governments, mainly, and by companies. None of us want to work for a company that is destroying the environment. Requirements are increased, and the guidelines for projects now are very different to what they used to be. Fluctuating oil prices have exerted downward pressure on exploration. Things are very tough at the moment. There's hardly any exploring going on because we don't know if the oil price is going to be there. So it's lifting the bar, to make commercial discoveries feasible, and it's decreasing the margins. We're not going to be earning as much even for those projects that we managed to develop, that we managed to greenlight. Are we having enough aircon? Or the light's on, so it must be on, but it's getting a bit warmer. Okay, but natural gas has become a vastly more marketable resource over time. I have said before, some of you may remember that, because I like to talk about Australia, it's a patch I know. Many years ago, when we were focused on finding oil, right, we started to find gas. Well, sorry, that's bad news. That's a dry hole. That's not what we wanted. So very often a gas discovery was plugged and abandoned. We didn't have anything that we could do with it to make it commercial. Our onshore gas markets were very small, and the lack of pipelines in the country was prohibitive, to do that. And on top of that, some of those pipelines that were privately owned by companies, but still private, not government, were playing cute in terms of allowing access of third parties, to that network. So gas discovered was not gas developed, was not necessarily gas commercialized in any manner, right? I have spoken about the Gulf of Mexico. The Gulf of Mexico, you find a sniff of gas, goes in the pipelines and gets sold. It's a mature market with the infrastructure there. The set of platforms around the Gulf of Mexico, which is many of them, have over the years created a vast network of interconnected pipelines, right? So as you go further from the shore to deeper waters, you don't have to worry about if you make a discovery and it's a gas discovery, or if you make a discovery and it's got vast amounts of gas associated. You don't have to stick a whole pipeline to shore yourself. You just go to the nearest hooking point, which is the other companies. That market over there is mature enough to work that way. New volumes of oil, new volumes of gas only have to hook to the network that belongs to many people, companies, and even private pipeline companies and that. But the system is there. You will be negotiated a price for what you're going to put through, right? You just hook up. We couldn't do that in Australia. You find gas in the Northwest Shelf and you put it where? I mean, now we got a bit of industry over there and so on, you know, the markets are a bit more developed, but still we are very far from finding gas and being able to commercialize it. LNG comes along. We will talk about that. There's a section about LNG, and that enthused me incredible. Because of Australia, you know, I mean, we're not a big oil and gas player in the world, but let's talk about LNG, and we will be mesmerized by what Australia is doing on that account. Why am I talking about Australia? When we're all from elsewhere, we're coming here to do a Masters of Oil and Gas Engineering, and you know why? Because most of you are going to stay here. Because most of you are going to be working in the oil and gas industry of Australia. Because I know that. Why do I know that? Because I've been doing this for 17 years, and that's what happens. And so the more you know about the Australian oil and gas industry, if you stay here, 90% chances now that you will be using the information you have learned in this course. Okay? Let's talk about the hydrocarbon value chain a little bit. Hydrocarbons follow a path, you know, they have a route, you know, to first from finding them to become marketable, sellable products, right? The value chain is just simply a sequence of logical, you know, bits and pieces, not events or activities that hydrocarbons have to take, you know, from exploration to market. With small variations, there's not much difference. All oil and gas projects normally follow the same sequence, you know, the way they get explored, they get a price, the way they get developed. They may have differences on storage and transportation and commercialization, perhaps, but it's more or less the same, right? In oil and gas, you know, the value chain is really divided into three segments. Traditionally, we have mostly always operated on the first segment, which is the upstream part of it. The upstream has got to do simply with that part of the industry that's got to do with finding, with exploring, finding, and producing the hydrocarbons, right? Doesn't do much with storage or transportation or marketability at the end. The downstream is that other end, you know, the one that makes, and I'm going to find a type of definition here. Let me just. The downstream is, you know, where the product starts to become more like what we are going to receive, oil and gas, now refineries and so on. And the midstream is the one that connects both, you know, transportation, pipelines, storage, you know, messaging, a little bit of the things to be able to move them and so on, okay? So that's in simple terms, because this is not a course on value chain, but I mean, we are talking about these things, okay? What we're on about is we need hydrocarbon systems. Yes? Yes, please.
Just go back to this slide.
Absolutely.
Yeah. If we're talking about LNG industry, we're talking about LNG plant, how do you actually fit into that segment?
LNG
Upstream or downstream?
is all. First, you got to produce the gas. Second, you got to modify it and transport it. And third, you got to, you know, basically regas it again at the end. And so it's got the whole range. But LNG itself is more or less a finished product, a refined product. If we talk about just LNG, LNG is downstream. It's a product that you sell. But really occupies the whole chain to get there. Yeah? Okay, so we need hydrocarbon systems for this. What's an hydrocarbon system? It's got to do with all the necessary conditions, you know, geological and otherwise, you know, for oil to exist, or gas, for hydrocarbons to exist. There's various elements that are needed for this, you know. There's got to be active source rock and all of the other related geological components. Why am I a little bit high level on all of this? Is because this isn't a course in geology or anything like that. You will have a look at that on other units, a bit more in detail, okay? So there's a number of planets that must align, no, that's just a quote unquote, to conform the existence of oil and gas. Roughly, the essential components of the system is the existence of suitable type of rock along the way. You know, there's source rock. Source rock is the one that's the one that is there where oil gets generated, or is the rock that is capable of oil being generated in it. It doesn't necessarily mean that that's the reservoir, that is where the oil is going to be found. It may be created somewhere, but it may travel, you know, and it may be trapped elsewhere, sometimes hundreds of kilometers away. There's reservoir rock, which is the actual rock, you know, that forms the reservoir, you know, be redundant, but where the traveling oil got parked at the end because it got trapped, because it couldn't continue going anywhere, right? So that's where we are going to find it. That's where we are going to try to get to it, okay? There's a sealed rock for that, you know, traveling oil to get trapped somewhere, not to be able to travel anymore. There's got to be a stop barrier. That's this kind of rock, you know, the hard rock, very impregnable, you know, where oil cannot leak through, and that's it. That's where you go, end of the road, right? Hopefully we will find it. And overburdened rock, which is anything above those that over time has been able to create the pressure, you know, help with the thermal temperature processes, and so on. Don't ask me too much detail about that, because I would probably tell you something that may not even be true. But, you know, my understanding is that, you know, those are the mechanisms of, you know, a hydrocarbon system. People like us in the financial side of things, we don't need to get too deep on it, luckily, because I think it's a very difficult area. And the essential processes involved, you know, with all these sorts of rocks is there's got to be a formation of that trap somewhere. You know, oil has to be, you know, trapped, has to be stopped somewhere. Generations have to be generated somewhere. Sorry, hydrocarbons must be generated somewhere, not necessarily where they're going to be trapped. And hydrocarbons migrate, sometimes very large distances, you know, from where they are actually created. You know, they just traveled over hundreds of millions of years. So it's interesting. Anyone with some knowledge of geology here, because when we speak, therefore, when we speak to geologists, you know, that some of them are very creative. Some of them are trying to imagine, where was this oil created? Where did it come from? Well, it was from down there. No, it usually comes from somewhere else. Usually it's traveled a long time. Usually it's traveled so long that when it got trapped, that oil wasn't any good anymore. You know, it was biodegraded. You know, the quality wasn't there. Or depending on how much it's traveled and how much the thermal processes may have been and so on, it's oil of the heavy type, it's oil of the lighter type, you know, which is more valuable or more usable, or is even gas, or is both, oil with gas associated and so on. But all that depends on nature, you know, and there's specialist people, you know, that actually figure that out. You know, they figure that out from the time the world was created and the continent started drifting. And I don't have a head for that. I'm sorry. I leave that to smarter people. Okay, so roughly the chain, you know, elements. You know, there's an exploration part of it. You know, it could be offshore, it could be onshore. There's seismic, you know, sound banging devices, which basically whose rebound noise is recorded by other vessels and processed and computed, and that way, you know, the difference in Earth sort of rocks, you know, and where possibly hydrocarbons could get worked out. That can be done offshore, which is a ship, you know, going like bang, bang, you know, pulling long streams, you know, of cables. Very difficult, you know. Seismic is created from that. basically seismic maps, lots of lines that for people like me mean absolutely nothing. But if you get a seismic interpreter, and in the old times, they just printed very long sheets of paper with lots of lines, say, what's in there? That's a seismic. And I say, how do you know that there's something? And they would lean over the thing and look it sideways, and start finding trends and that. I mean, it's an acquired art. Now it's all computerized, but I mean, it beats me. Then, obviously development, where, onshore, offshore, water depths, whatever will dictate what type of development would have to be applied to these hydrocarbons. Given basically what type of development would have to be used is what sort of oil in what sort of volumes, is what it would be necessary to make these sort of things commercial. So it depends on the oil, on the amount, on the quality, and the development. A very deep ocean development is much more expensive, than an onshore one. Therefore, it will require much larger volumes. Then we have the production part of it. Offshore, you see a variety of possibilities, for producing from tension legs, spars, floating things there, FPSOs, and so on. That will depend on water depths, will depend on all the physical characteristics of what's being found and how it's likely to be produced. And then there's the old, nodding donkeys onshore. We don't have many nodding donkeys in Australia. We don't have hardly any. But there are some in Barrow Island. There was an issue with Barrow Island. They were moving all the native wildlife a little while ago to one of the other islands. Something happened. There's a few nodding donkeys there, but I have not seen them anywhere else. I mean, I was in Port of Spain in Trinidad and Tobago once doing business development, and I came across some there by the freeway, but personally I haven't seen many. Okay, so then there's transport part of it. It's obviously pipelines. If gas, it's oil, it's got to be transported to somewhere, to storage facilities, to processing facilities. You can see there also there's a cargo ship with bubbles. That one is for transporting LNG, compressed gas, into liquefied phase. Gas cannot be transported very long distances on gassy phase, would be very, very expensive. So it's a way that they have found to be able to commercialize gas, make it LNG. You need at the other end, you need a regasification plant, but all over the world, more LNG ports are coming up, which is pretty good. So LNG has become a real option. The country I come from originally, Chile, we are not very blessed in hydrocarbons at all, right? We don't have any, I think. We're very, very poor. So we need gas. We had made a deal with Argentina, which is just over the Andes range on the other side, for gas supply. That didn't go for long. They didn't have enough gas in the end, or started playing funny people, and the whole, pipeline over the Andes got disused. So what do we do now? We need gas. Well, Chile's now got 3 LNG ports, right? So has become an LNG taker, right? And that's only happened in the space of 10, 15 years max. We are now an LNG taker. The other ship you see there is an oil tanker. Most of the crude we find, as long as we find it in the right amounts that is able to pay for the development, we will develop because it's got a market somewhere, right? And we just stick it on ships and it gets cargo somewhere in the world. Now there will be the refineries that will take it. Of course, we've got to take into account the transport costs and that, but it's not like gas. Gas has to have a market nearby where you can pipe it. That only happens on mature markets, maybe USA, Western Europe, South Korea, Japan, sort of thing. Everywhere else, you almost have to create the market or hope to find the gas in large enough amounts to turn it into LNG, right? Which Australia is doing. We are heading in that direction. And then there's the distribution, the real downstream part of it, with the storage and the gas companies coming in and so on. But it's more or less a simple chain. This is just very, very cartoonish, right? Again, I am not an earth scientist, or a geologist or a petroleum engineer or a reservoir engineer. So my knowledge of these things is just what I need to know, right? And I pass it on to you guys. So oil exploration, you've seen this is just a couple of types of faults, but can be found that there's a few more types of accumulations and so on. And the point here, you can see, there's 3 different types of rocks. It doesn't say which is the overburdened rock, but it's all about the top there. Everything on top is overburdened. You can find it, if you're lucky enough and you don't have anything to do with gas, well, you can find just oil, which is great, which is what we were on about many years ago. But many a times, oil comes with gas associated. And as soon as things start, well, there is an existing gas cap to start with, or if not, there will be a gas cap, as the field starts to be produced, because of the changes in volumes and temperatures and pressures, and that gas will start to dissociate from the oil as the field gets produced, and there will be a gassy area there. Not very wanted by those that just want oil. It's because they don't have anything to do with the gas. Gas flaring is not on anymore. Many years that gas flaring is being clamped, severely. In many parts of the world, we still see gas flaring on places. Venezuela, next to Colombia, right? Venezuela's got a little bit of a problem at the moment in this oil and gas industry, right? They got heavy oil. They haven't done maintenance. There's a lot of things. We knew it 15, 20 years ago, that sometime the production there was going to go down. The oil and gas areas, you have to maintain them. You have to drill a lot, to replace volumes and so on. I was reading something the other day. There's the town there where they produce and refine a number of things that it's not working very well. So they're having to flare a lot of gas. And someone said, jokingly and almost non-jokingly, that little town doesn't need electrical, street lightings anymore, because with the flaring of the gas plants that they have, the whole place can be seen from the space shuttle almost. How do you allow something like that in today's world? We may be talking about sovereignty of companies, we are our own things, we don't want anyone from outside to tell us, but that's a world hazard. You can't do that. In Australia, we can flare maybe when we are testing a well or something, but beyond that, it would have to be very, very strict conditions and situation by which the government would perhaps allow a bit of flaring every now and then. So, what do we do when we find gas? Problem. If we don't have where to put it, we either have to flare it, well, we can't flare it anymore. Well, we re-inject it, right? But that's a cost. You've got to stick in another well, you've got to pump the gas inside into the reservoir again, so the gas comes from the bottom of the oil, flows up, and with that at least it helps, lifting a bit more oil, or making the oil easier to flow. But still, it's kind of an iteration thing. It's cost that you didn't need to incur because you're not doing much with the gas anyway. Right? On the other hand, you may look and find for gas accumulations, which is what you're looking for. And great, that means that you have either a gas market or you're going to be able to find it in sizes enough for LNG. But they may come with liquids, perhaps a little bit of oil, mostly condensates or LPGs, perhaps not 5, 6, and 7s. Correct me if I'm wrong. No, but that's not a bad thing for gas. You know, when they're looking for gas, great, they got the gas problem solved, and it comes with some liquids. Brilliant. You got something cream on top to sell, right? Because these other things have markets. Okay, so that's the oil part of it. The gas part of it, you know, there's conventional non-associated gas, that's really just a gas find, or there's, as we were talking, associated gas and so on. Now there's tight sand gas, you know, the areas which is more difficult to produce. I believe it's in this sort of areas where they have to, you know, to use some other techniques like fracking and that, in which they drill something and they got to, you know, pump in water solutions and that. And when it's near the surface, like in places like Brisbane and that area, it's a bit of an issue because when you're pumping in is wastewater, and although it's not proven that it does anything wrong, there's a bit of fear around about what it may be causing, right? It's fear, maybe founded, maybe unfounded, but I don't think we know enough yet, to be quite honest. In the US, for example, there's cases in which they say, oh no, we can smell, you know, the methane or whatever near my farm, you know, my cows are dying. I mean, we don't know. We don't know. I mean, you know, when people want to achieve certain scenarios, you know, they can put anything to justify it. But yeah, there's a lot of unconventional gas now, and that's important for Australia. So these are your exploration drivers. You know, there's various geological elements that have to come into fruition for the generation or trapping of oil and gas. In what regards to us, well, we just need to know that the geologists do a responsible job on assessing this, right? And from the point of view of us calculating, you know, whether we are going to drill an exploration well or not, well, we will have a lot of parameters coming from reservoir engineers, from geologists, as to what could be found and how much of it, and as to the probability of those hydrocarbons actually existing. How do we do that? Well, some of these, there's 7 there, is the 7 key variables, you know, that have to consider them planets. You know, they have to more or less align to create a good probability that it's going to entice us, the commercial people, to go and drill. Now, different companies do these things differently. BHP, for instance, I remember them doing prospect evaluation using 5 variables, right? Using, you know, source, reservoir, seal, and trap, but I don't remember them using all. I came across one company once that was using 6 variables, you know, for the calculation of POS. It may just be that BHP, you know, blends 2 of these variables into one. I don't know enough, but the point is, if you use 5, or you use 6, or you use 4 of them, use it consistently, do it across your company, right? Do not bias, right? But the important thing is this. The probability goes, as you know, from 0% to 100%. Yep. So the probability of success of an exploration well is going to be measured by us using the POS, right? Sorry. The success of an exploration well is going to be measured by us or authorized using a key variable that's called the POS, coming from the geologists. Now, if you have 4 variables involved in the calculation of the POS, each variable goes from 0 to 100%. So one of them could be almost certain, 90%. The other one, not so certain but good, 70%. The other one 50, and the other one 30 is the best assessment of a team of geologists and peer-reviewed and everything. You know, many heads comes into this. And then what do? You say, okay, these are the accepted parameters, you multiply them. So you multiply 0.9 times 0.7 times 0.5 times 0.3. And the resulting is your POS that is given to the commercial guys, us, and we use it. If you use 4 variables, well, okay, you may end up, I don't know, and we ended up in 20% or 25% POS. It's going to be perhaps different to a company that uses 5 variables, or one that uses 6 variables even, because you multiply again by another number that is between 0 and 1, right? So you're probably, I may be totally wrong about this, but my impression is that the more variables you use, the lower the POSes that you tend to get. I am used to 5 variables, which are the ones that BHP uses and Woodside uses, right? Whether 1 or 2 of them are 2 variables blended and so on, but I have come across a company that had a calculation with 6 variables, and I wonder, let's say you have 4 variables, all of them are 90%. You get 90 times 90%, that's 81, times 90%, that's 72, times 90%, that's 63. Give it another one, 5th variable, also is 90%. 63 times 90%, that's 56. So keep adding, keep making it much more stringent, and you are going to continue to lower the POS in a way. It's my simplistic view from the outside. The problem with that is that the lower the POS, it goes onto a decision tree that we're going to make of expected monetary value that we're going to have a look in a day or two. It's going to lower the chances that we are going to be allowed to say, yep, that's a good well to drill. It ranks well. So I don't know. I mean, what am I saying that can be educated further? I mean, we got a geologist in the class. What have I said? Sorry, I just forgot your name again. Mr. Orta. Yeah? What have I said there that you can help me with? Can you help me with this? I mean, it's... do you work for an oil and gas company at the moment?
Yeah, I work for a national oil and gas company.
What do they do on this sort of regard? I mean, do they do POSes or... because do they do exploration?
Yeah, the company does, but I wasn't working on exploration department. I was working on
Okay. You aware what they do? No, what the exploration guys do?
Well, the company just started.
Okay. You know what? If the company's just started, my guess, you're going to have a few guys in there that either work for Exxon, BHP, or Woodside, or Santos, or somewhere else, and they are probably going to form the management of that new company, and they are probably going to bring some of their know-how into that company, and that company is going to adopt some of the ways of the majors. That's what we all do when we go out from Woodsides and BHPs, and we work in small West Perth companies. We all take what we learn in the big ones. So, can you find out? Because I want to know. I want to know if there is an exploration way already, right? If there is an exploration methodology in place already, maybe you can tell us a little bit about it. Yeah? 3 minutes. I mean, you don't have to just say, well, I talked to someone in the company and he explained that this is what they do there and why. Deal? Okay, good. Thank you. You're making it easy for me. So, the development drivers will depend on the physical characteristics of the type of hydrocarbons found, oil or gas, the quality, the impurity contents, and so on. I've lost track a little bit of, our contents of CO2 and H2 or whatever it is, H2S or whatever it is, that we have that is bad. Some of these contents make you have to build your projects using, chrome type of pipelines and equipment because it's too high corrosion. The Gulf of Mexico's got that. As you go deeper into deeper waters, the contents of H2S escalates, from 1% to more than 2% and to under 3%. And numbers like that, I tend to understand, are quite taxing, in terms of the quality of the materials that you have to build your fields from. your structures from, your pipelines and everything, wells. Again, what's important is the location of the find, whether it's offshore or onshore. Of course, onshore is a lot cheaper, generally, unless you're high in the mountains or you're in the jungle or in PNG and you got to clear, vast areas of jungle and so on. But generally onshore, you need lower volumes to be able to have a commercial project. Marketability, what type of hydrocarbon do you have? I mentioned Venezuela, they are specialists on heavy oils. Largest reserves in the planet of oil, crude, but it's of the heavier type. So they have to blend it with lighter types to be able to sell it. Sold alone, just as it comes, it'll be quite a bit of that will go to lubricants, and heavier type of usages. Marketability is going to do a lot also, the proximity to the market. We were talking about that on gas, for instance. Pardon if you don't understand anything here. Those that is the first contact with oil and gas, and this is your first semester, there's a basic calculation of how much oil there could be down there, and it's got to do with a number of variables, that are used for this. Very simplistically, it's you've got to have something, a cylinder or a square or whatever it is, of certain area and certain height. That's where you start from, right? Gross, rough, volumetric type of assessment, right? And then you start bringing the volumes down, educating them down by a number of variables. Say, in that whole area where there could be oil, not all of it may be oil-bearing, oil-paying bits of rock. It may have bits in the middle that don't contain any oil. Say maybe 100 meters high, but maybe 20 or 30 or 40 meters of different bands of rock within it contain no oil. So the overall amount is reduced a little bit by this net to gross type of ratio. Now, how porous is it? Will it flow? That oil that's in there, will it flow? Now, the porosity is obviously the size of the cavity in the rock that's going to allow the oil to go through. That's never too much. I believe ideal lab porosity, the optimal is what? It's about 40% or 45%. If you had round marbles and you put them all together in a tube, the porosity of that would only be 45%. So take any volume, ideal porosity, 45% maximum. So you've got to reduce it by more than half. Continue bringing it down by other variables. How much of the fluids in there are actually hydrocarbons? How much is water? And then how much will this change when it's recovered, when it changes pressures, when it's taken from down there, which is compression, to surface? That's not a very big change, but still, there's a percentage that the volume changes. So this graph here is what we're going to be doing in the lab on Monday. Okay, we're going to do a simulation of Monte Carlo with this. We will put a probabilistic distribution to each one of these variables. We are going to couple it with an NPV value at the end, and we're going to try to generate probabilistic oil in place volumes. We are going to have a recovery factor that we're going to have to work somehow. We are going to create a recoverable reserves, and then we're going to link that to perhaps just a straight line graph for NPVs. So we're going to have a net present value of that accumulation, and we're going to play with it a little bit around, okay? Find out what's the probability of getting a positive NPV. What's the probability of getting an NPV that's more than 50 million? What's the probability of losing more than 20 million? And you'll see how software will help you. Why is that important? Because old people like me were going to university one day and we didn't have personal computers. Calculators just started to come out, right? And we had a large computer, an IBM 371, which was a whole gymnasium size of where the computer was kept. And we didn't have keyboards to enter things. We had to punch cards, So we had to write every one of the line statements, and we had simulation of Monte Carlo. But we had to write the random number generators in Fortran. Now, you were a software, you do 3 clicks. And that's what we could have been working on for a month. The power at your hands now is just incredible. I won't say any more because then you start to guess how old I am. I don't like that. So, about the oil chain. Oil has been produced, and sold for decades. It is a required commodity all over the globe. All types of oil. We'll have readily available markets somewhere, right? So a barrel of oil produced, therefore, it's already passed the commerciality test. It can be built and produced for less that we're going to be able to generate in revenue. It's going to be generally a barrel of oil sold. Somewhere there is a market for it. See, it's the difference with gas. Unless gas is big enough to produce LNG, we don't have the same issue. If gas is less than maybe a TCF or 2 or just a few hundred BCFs, units of volume of gas, we can't have LNG with that, and the gas will have to sit down and pipe for ages until a market is created somewhere. Okay? So there's already a difference there between oil and gas. There are some types of oil which have more specific uses and hence require more specific markets, but those markets do exist. The oils produced commercially will have a market somewhere. Okay? The real challenge with oil is then finding it in volumes that can ensure a commercial development, volumes that can pay for the development. Must not necessarily be large volumes. We've been developing fields 20-something million barrels, 30 million barrels in Australia. A long shot from the 800 million, the billion barrels that were being found 30 years ago. The world oil market is well developed and its fundamentals work well. Supply and demand for all types of crude always exist somewhere. Okay? But what about the gas? Gas is a bit different. Apart from these mature gas markets in the world, in which I was mentioning USA, Western Europe, and that where you find some gas, you probably, most likely, be able to find a way in it, hook up somewhere, right? Gas discovery is not necessarily developed or sold, right? It's got to jump over a few hoops first. In non-mature markets, certainly us here in Australia, natural gas for domestic purposes tends to be difficult to market. We know that well. Natural gas elements, chain elements, have a large cost, and in many cases can only be borne by large gas accumulations. Storage, transportation, and distribution costs of natural gas are high, unless we perhaps liquidify it, which gives us a chance. Again, we need large volumes for that. For many years, I mentioned before, in Australia, gas discovery wells were treated as a dry hole and the well was plugged and abandoned, many of those. Large Australian gas discoveries were earmarked for LNG production, but also 25, 30 years ago, given the lack of LNG projects, not just in Australia, but in the world, I'd say. In Australia, we only had the Northwest Shelf. For a long period of time, those gases were destined to wait a long time on pipe. So we knew we had them, but we couldn't do anything with them until something happened. Most of my time in BHP, I joined them in 1985. The Northwest Shelf Department was trying to, get this fourth train going on. A train is just a whole bunch of equipment, that can produce LNG. It's almost self-sustainable, The LNG project, as it stood at that time, had 3 trains, right? So 3 lines of production. This was a 4th line of production that was planned. It took not less than 10 years because they had to work out, they had to be sold to Japan. Japan wasn't signing and so on. It took no less than 10 years for just the fourth train, which is a small expansion of an existing LNG project, to come to fruition. That was hard. The story now is very different. You'll see some of the graphs that I have in this session. I have learned something in the last 4 or 5 weeks in which I started looking at this, and I am utterly impressed. Okay? All right, so contractual arrangements tend to take a long time to achieve. Gas fields are generally not developed in Australia or outside of mature gas markets in absence of binding contracts, even of those gases that we find here that we're going to send to the Karatha market. We have to have a contract. We have to have a 20-year supply contract of some kind. Otherwise, it's no go. We don't do it. Okay? Okay, some of relevant conversion factors for you. Why have I put them there? Because some of the units that we're going to see in the gas picture come from an Australian energy resource assessment that puts all of the types of energies that are produced in Australia, including uranium, and makes them all compatible in petajoules, PJs, which is not in barrels of oil equivalent, which is not in million tons of LNG or anything like that, but in petajoules, which is the energy capacity of those items, right? In order to be able to put them all in the same graph and put them together so we can see the story. So there's some conversion factors there. I've done some conversions here, and we will have a look about it. Most of what we will see from now on comes from the Australian Energy Resource Assessment, which is called AERA, through the Bureau of Resources and Energy Economics. That's the link for it. But I have also, no, this is too big. I didn't load it up. It's not one of the documents that I've uploaded for you. It was quite a few megs, 45 meg or something. The assessment that I'm talking about provides governments, industry, all of us, and the community with the information we need to participate in an informed discussion of Australia's energy future. It highlights Australia's potential to increase its energy, and so on. Okay? So, first things first. Okay, this is the Australian energy production. Unfortunately, the data is only until about 2011-12. The big shift in Australia has happened from 14, 15, and 16 onwards, but it was already looking like this. Okay? So, the main items of Australian energy production are renewables, very little at the top, the blue. Uranium. I didn't know how big uranium is. Certainly more than the green, which is natural gas, and more than the reddish, which is crude oil and LPG and condensates, right? And then there's coal. Coal, I knew there was a fair bit, but once I ignore renewables, uranium, black coal, and brown coal, and I just focus on the red and the green bits of the graph, something is telling me there. I can see it. The red has been for years much more meaningful than the green. Oil and liquids have been much more meaningful production for Australia than gas in general. Gas, LNG is included here, right? The gas produced for LNG is in this graph as well. Okay? But over time, you see that oil and liquids have maintained, but lately they started to dwindle. We're producing less oil, crude, liquids. But what's happened with gas? Gas has been always growing, to a point in which, when this started to be measured in 73, 74, we couldn't even compute much gas compared to liquids. And now, we can say that gas is 3 times bigger than liquids. It's been a change, it's been a focus. I mentioned last year, and I have mentioned in many courses, in every course I've done, not that I could find the report, but there was a lot of talk amongst the geologists. Please help me here. There is a YTF, a yet to find study, right? Companies do it. APIA did it 25 years ago, 30 years ago, right? A yet to find. What's yet to find in Australia? And they came to the conclusion that yes, there were hundreds of millions of barrels, maybe even 3-4 billion of barrels of oil still to be discovered, but they came but the majority of what's still to be discovered in Australia is gas. So they were saying then, 20, 25, 30 years ago, Australia is a gas country. It's going that way. It's definitely going that way. Some of the numbers that I'm going to show you have convinced me that these guys knew what they were talking about. Yeah? Australia is a gas country. Okay, 1,000 petajoules, right, which is the scale here on the left-hand side, is about, because it depends on who you talk to, what gas, what energy, about 170-ish million barrels. Okay, so let me have a quick look here. I mean, what would have the oil been? I mean, do we all agree that oil has been producing at about 1,000 petajoules per year, more or less, give or take? Yeah, from the graph? 1,000 petajoules per year, 177 million barrels per year. Daily, about 450,000 barrels a day. You know what that is? Bass Strait. That is Bass Strait. Bass Strait was Australians' oil production for decades. Right? When I moved to Perth in the late 1990s, Bass Strait had already started to go down a little bit, but all the early days, 2/3 of that graph is Bass Strait. Now, that started dwindling, and the oil province came to Western Australia. Carlos Moncada came to Western Australia because BHP moved him here, because this is where the action was going to be, right? So, what does that mean? Where are we today? I'd say safely less than 1,000 petajoules per day, maybe 800. So maybe we are 350, 400,000 barrels a day today, less. And gas, 3 times that. So gas is going over 1 million barrels of oil equivalent a day. This is before the explosion of the LNG projects that you will see soon, right? 1 million barrels a day has got world meaning. I mean, countries are haggling, for cutting, 1 million or 1.5 million barrels a day to try to lift the price. Yeah? Amongst all of the OPEC countries and the non-OPEC countries, they are trying to, to slow the production a little bit for about 1 million barrels, or 1.5 million or 2 million barrels a day, amongst all of them. This has got world significance. Okay, so how much we consume? You'll see this is the scale. The other one was 20,000 PJ. This is 7,000 PJ. We consume slightly less than we export. So there's room for exports here. Yeah, that's all I want to do in that graph there. But how much do we export? We see there that most of our crude was exported. It's more or less behaved in the same way that we saw 2 graphs ago, but gas has gone really high. Okay? So gas is the thing. All that is in petajoules, right? Let's talk about Australian oil a little bit in the world ranking. So it's nothing to boast about. Oil reserves to the end of 2011, which is in this 2014 report. Australia is that little notch there, just behind Nigeria. I wish. Why are we behind Nigeria and there's such a big jump there? Because what this graph did, it graphed the 10 top countries and then Australia. there must be tens of countries between Nigeria and Australia that are not in this graph. All right? So it had me thinking there for a little while, Silvanus. There's got to be a trick to this. I mean, there can't be such a jump. Well, the 10 top countries, and then where does Australia fit? What's the percentage of the world reserves of Australia just on that basis? 0 point something, isn't it? 0 point something. Nothing we can do about it, guys. And how much we produced? Well, some of the countries with a lot of reserves aren't up there in the production stakes. Venezuela, biggest reserves in the world. Where is it on production? Over there. Management, perhaps? Or just the quality of the oil? Or both? Could be, right? Australia, down there, just behind Nigeria again. Okay, we know the story there. So again, 0 point something percent probably, isn't it? Yeah, it's not much. So, okay, that's us in oil. For you, the light there, I just copy that. No, that's the oil supply chain in Australia. I don't want to get into it because it's more or less what we talked in cartoons early on, you know. But where does this oil come from? Funny, in petajoules. Remember, 1,000 petajoules is about 177 million barrels of oil, okay? All right, where did it come from? Light green has been produced. Darker green still to be produced. Where's the largest one? Gippsland Basin, Bass Strait. Bass Strait had 13 interconnected platforms at one stage for a production of about between 400,000 and 500,000 barrels a day at the best time. But Gippsland Basin has produced 22.2 petajoules, and it's only got about 1.4 remaining. So what is that saying? It's got about 1.4 petajoules, sorry, 1,400 petajoules remaining. Maybe 240 to 150 million barrels is all is left in a world-class province that it used to be. Where else? Carnarvon Basin. The future is in Perth. Carlos, BHP will move you to Perth. No, we will do this and that for you. So I came here. There you go. Total production, a fair bit as well. 9,000 odd petajoules, but it's got more remaining than Bass Strait. It's got 4,300. So 357, maybe 800 million barrels still there. Nothing world-class by a long stretch, isn't it? Nothing world-class. Makes me jealous, makes me envious of other stuff I see. Just read, I read Venezuelan news every day, almost. I got family there, and I'm a little bit concerned about, how they're doing. And, but there was they have a dispute with Guyana, which is a very small country where they limit to the east, right? It's obviously very, very good petroleum areas. Well, Chevron is expanding their presence in there. They have made a discovery, 2 discovery wells, Lisa 1 and Lisa 2, right? And their expected production is going to be about 100 million barrels per year. So you have a look at that. That new discovery, that one discovery, and it has multi-hundred barrel reserves. They are thinking perhaps about 800 million barrels of recoverable volumes. We don't find that anymore. It's not that easy, or that's probably more than that. They say it's going to produce for somewhere around 15 and 20 years. Starts at 100 million a year, maybe for 2 years, plateau rate, and then starts going down, right? But that's going to bring what? 300,000 barrels a day. And we are producing 150,000 barrels a day from the whole province here. Right? So, look, fortunes are very changing in this sort of thing. Where else do we have some oil? Bonaparte Basin up there, it's produced 2.6, so it's produced about 400 million maybe, and it's got about a couple of 100 million left. So, not a rosy picture, isn't it? That certainly puts us in the 0.0 something %, right? It's not great. Okay, so our oil production, we can see all of the graphs are a little bit, and more than anything I can say, you can see here what happened, where it went. The little purpley, greyish sort of thing is Victoria, right? Victoria used to be the big dog here, and Now it's not really. Some of the condensates have maintained, continue producing gases maybe, but really the production of Australia shifted to Western Australia, right? The orangey one. Not enough to make up for the decline in Victoria, in Bass Strait, but at least it got us somewhere. And by now, we're not getting anything. We're moving towards gas. So let's talk about gas. A little bit of a steps there, not intending to go too deep into that. Where are we in gas? 0.00 something anymore, or maybe 0.5 now? We're a bit better in this one, aren't we? Yeah? Not much of a match in this. Where are you from? From Russia. So, who's at the top? Yeah, it's pretty clear, huh? Okay, so look, small percentages again, but this is not the same thing Australia and Nigeria that we had before. This may be well and truly an 11th place, right? Not like the Yonks place, down where we had before. Again, I don't think it's going to be more than maybe a percentage of the world reserves, or well, if lucky, okay? But better than oil, right? So we shouldn't be bloating about this. We shouldn't be like, going out there and saying, who's got gas? Australia, hey, mate. We can't say that here because we've got more than oil, but we're still no one, right? Nevertheless, let's keep having a look at the story. That's the gas supply chain, to have it in a similar issue with the oil. Where is this gas? Conventional gas, the red type, all on the left part of the country where we are. Almost all of it unproduced yet. Yep. Almost all of it unproduced yet. The yellow means produced. So where is our future? These geologists from APR 30 years ago, they got it spot on. What have we got left? The Carnarvon Basin, which is the area where the Northwest Shelf project is, the one that's been producing gas for 30 years now, right? Supplying the Japanese, where we fought hard for the fourth train, has produced, according to this, 18,000 petajoules. Those are big numbers compared to oil, energy equivalent content. So that is, we are about the 2.7 billion barrels of oil equivalent. That's not small bickies. And, that's what it's got left. And the yellow, what it has produced, did I get all that around? Sorry, no, okay. Again, has produced 2 point something, and what's got left? 96,000 petajoules. Almost 100,000 petajoules. So what are we talking here? 1 point a lot of oil equivalent left. 1,000 petajoules? 7 billion? 7, okay. But it's a lot, isn't it? It's a lot. So that's what the future is. What about the other? Browse Basin. Well, it's produced nothing. Hasn't started producing. Well, I don't see anything. And Bonaparte Basin has produced a mockery yet. I mean, the kind of numbers there remaining, 37,000 petajoules. Yeah, several billion barrels of oil equivalent, 6, 7, or 8 billion barrels of oil equivalent. Bonaparte Basin, 24 petajoules left, like 4 billion barrels of oil equivalent. How much did we say we got left in oil? 600, 800 million barrels all up? Any one of these has got more oil than we got in the country left, right? Let's leave the conventionals aside. Go for the orangey ones on the other side of the country. They are the new ones. They are the coal seam gas or coal bed methane, that's called as well, and that requires a few suspicious practices, to get it done. Well, look at that big one there. Surat Basins produced 290, and it's got 25,000 left. That's about 4 billion barrels of oil equivalent, and so on. So I think we know where the LNG is going to be coming from, don't we? Right? So we had one LNG project at the Northwest Shelf, Just bear with me, we're going to get there, right? Sorry, WA gas market. I would probably leave those to your heart's contents. You know, it's about 845 terajoules a day. So it's basically terajoules, petajoules, less than a petajoule per day. Look, the units actually kill me. And that's more or less our pipeline for gas. You know, there's a few mines there, Telfer and the Pilbara and the Goldfields. That's where our gas is going. I put this up there so you could have a feel for what's happening with our gas here. If you end up working in the north here, you may have to do with the gas in this area here, okay? What about LNG now? Let's talk about LNG. Let's talk about LNG. Where were we in the world ranking for oil and gas? We were at the bottom. We were nothing. We were laughable. Except, now the Russians would have all reasons to laugh, wouldn't they? But they don't. He's a gentleman. And look at the world LNG exports, and we don't have the sort of volumes to compete. We are not fourth in the world in gas. We are way down. We may have a 1% of the world of the gas. Why are we fourth in the world in 2011 on LNG exports? We're doing more than other countries are. We've gone crazy about LNG. Who's the top producer? Qatar. Then Malaysia and Indonesia. Do I have any Malaysians or Indonesians here? Not one hand up. I wanted to say this. They are no longer second and third. Australia is second now in 2016. Second in the world with the level of reserves as minute as you saw on the other charts. We must be doing something. The only point against it is we are going to use our reserves faster than our countries. So how long do we have at the rate of almost 10 LNG projects that are now producing? What is the useful life of those? I don't dare to say yet. Okay? So Australia is going up and up and up with the world. 2011, we don't notice the real jump here. This, again, from a different source, but the same graph, says, show the top 10 LNG exporters. Qatar, Malaysia, Indonesia, and Australia. And it color-coded them. And it said Qatar is stagnant. I mean, it's very difficult to grow when you're producing like so much, right? But Malaysia and Indonesia, it predicted then that they were declining, right? And Australia and Nigeria are growing. Well, there you go. The graph, they didn't produce the same graph as per 2015. On the 2015, they put the pie graph that we got on the right-hand side. And there you can see Qatar on top and Australia second with 12% of the world LNG exports. I think that is extraordinary for a country with that's maybe has a 1% perhaps, wouldn't it? Oh, even less of the gas of the world. If we don't find more gas in the next few decades, you know, we're probably going to run out of gas, right? Faster than anyone else. But for now, it's going quickly. This is the way our LNG picture has moved. Remember my story about the Northwest Shelf train? How long it took us to stick the fourth train in it? Well, that's a 90, to 2005 almost story, right? Well, the fourth train would have been in 92 or 93, right? That little bump there. Sorry, the first bit there is the 3 trains. That's what they were capable of, maybe 4-5 million tons per annum. We changed unit here in case you hadn't noticed. Then the 4th train would have come in, yeah, and maybe here's the 5th train. Great, but still just the one project, right? Then the next one came up, Darwin LNG train, which has got a few gases coming from the ocean and exported down, right? That was, what, 2007 or thereabouts. And then, I think this is, that is train 5 then, isn't it? That is train 5 then. Yeah. Sorry, I'm not an LNG guy or a gas guy, so I mean some of these dates totally confound me, but the blue is the same blue, so that is the LNG. That must be the train 5 then. This is the train 4 then, which took so long, right? And okay, LNG, you know, Northwest Shelf continues to be the big player there. But until just 7 years ago or so, it's all we had with the Darwin LNG train that had come in to give a hand, right? Then Prelude comes in. You know, this is a floating thing, first in the world by Shell, right? That's an interesting one. BHP thought about it in the 1980s of producing LNG on a floating facility. I remember the engineers talking about it and they said it's too difficult, you know, because it requires pretty large what they call chimneys and that, and with the ocean on the place that they wanted to put it, it could have been an issue, you know, after long and prolonged and whatever. It didn't happen, but they thought about it, right? Now, Prelude, Shell, actually is a floating vessel that is an LNG plant. So on one side of the vessel, it produces the LNG, the gas, you know, it treats it, it manufactures and it passes it on down to the next parts of the vessel, which is actually the LNG project, floating LNG project. And that will obviously produce the LNG, you know, a barge will come by with the bubbles and they will fill it up and it will go away, right? From the point of view of economics, in my other subject, I have told that that's got a very interesting connotation to it because those two are two different fiscal systems. They pay tax differently, right? So what do you do when you've got two projects on top of the same vessel? How do you work out what's been spent for what? How do you work out the tax? Let's not worry about it. We will talk about it a little bit later, but it's the first one, so it must have kicked a lot of question marks around. Then the next one. Which one? The purpley. Queensland CLNG. You know, again, unconventional gas. Gosh, unconventional gas is now allowing LNG production. I mean, we really moved on, haven't we? So that came in, right, not so long ago, and in the space of what, of 10 years, we've more than quadrupled, or even, you know, 5 times what we were producing in the very early days. And then again, the stampede. You know, the APLNG, the GLNG, I think is Gladstone. Gladstone, yeah. Green, Gorgon, and all of those have started producing, have shipped their first shipments already. Stampede, 15 and 16, you know. So where are we on producing projects? You know, up to the grey one there. So 65 million tons per year already. I mean, that's what's put us basically second in the world. And the next ones are not too far off, you know, the ones that are still being worked on, Wheatstone and Ichthys, you know, and Prelude is not, what is this? That was Pluto. Well, why no one stopped me? I said Prelude. Prelude is still being built. That blue there is Pluto. That's Woodside. Pluto was discovered when I was there, and wasn't my department, so I hadn't anything to do with it, unfortunately. A little bit unusual picture for a country. I mean, the way LNG has gone. It's really gone. This is in some ways exponential, if not better. Okay, where are these projects? The good old stalwart, you know, and flagship one. Northwest Shelf, it's over there. You know, Pluto, it's over there. The ones that have Darwin's producing is there. These 3 are producing, you know, the eastern states there. Ichthys is still going. Prelude would still be going then, and Wheatstone would still be going. Gorgon is already producing, Pluto, and so on. A magnificent story. I mean, I knew there were LNG projects, but it's never been my thing, you know, and never too worried about it. And now that I've done this for you guys, I've done this for me. You know, I really like it. So those are some of the details of what's happened. But this is a graph that was produced in 2014 with data up to 2012 or 13. So they got some of these projects still on the under construction area. But that's the latest graph I could get for you. Okay, there's not up to scratch. So producing projects. The North West Shelf venture began shipping cargoes in 1989. Project has since grown to include 5 production units or trains. It now produces 16.3 million tons per annum. A ton is about 8.9 barrels, so if it's 16.3 million tons, maybe that's 150 or 160 million barrels per year. Again, the equivalent to about 400,000 barrels of oil equivalent a day. Large amounts. Darwin began producing in 2006, 1 train up to 3.7 a year, smaller than North West Shelf. Obviously it's just 1 train. Pluto, 2012, 1 4.3 million ton train. Queensland Curtis LNG in December 14, 4.2. Gladstone, September 15. Doesn't say the volume. Australia Pacific LNG in December of 5. So many of them very recently. Okay, still under construction. 3 large ones. Prelude, Wheatstone and Ichthys. About 80 billion worth of LNG projects still out there in construction. So there's a few more graphs there for us to entertain ourselves, that you can, I am happy for you to have a look at. But what I'm saying here, just to finish this part so we can have a little bit of a break. Australians, as a player, we are a minor player on the hydrocarbons picture, lowly ranked overall, oil and gas reserves-wise. Oil discoveries have dwindled both in number and size, very small at the moment. Natural gas occurrence in hydrocarbon discoveries has increased both as associated gas and straight gas reservoirs. So hydrocarbon focus has naturally shifted towards natural gas, over the years, and despite its low rank in gas reserves, Australia ranks the 2nd in the world ranking of LNG exports, which is remarkable. Australian LNG projects have proliferated since the early days of the North West Shelf with only 3 trains. In the last 3 years, several new LNG projects have started production and more are under construction. With that, I am telling you what I learned. So I am ahead of you on this one by about a month and a half, right? I wasn't acquainted with the gas picture of Australia. I am blown out of the water, absolutely. Break? 15 minutes? Whatever? Yeah? Good. Yeah. Yes.
This class on Tuesday is a clash with another.
I know. Do your best. Do whatever you can. So, what are we got on Tuesday? So this Tuesday and next Tuesday. That's good because you're not going to miss the lab. The lab's going to be okay. The lab is on Thursday and then on Monday. Yeah? Yeah? Yeah?
So tomorrow I can go to another class.
You could, but we got from 4 to 8 tomorrow, so you got a clash. Both Tuesdays we got from 4 to 8. So you got this is your Tuesday.
Yeah.
And what time is that? That is me at 16.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But then you got to go to the other one. What is this other one?
Gas processing is my computer class.
Who's the teacher for that?
Sorry, I don't know the teacher's name.
It doesn't say there. No. No, it doesn't say there. Yeah, that was going to happen, and you're going to have to listen to it. Right? You're going to have to listen to it and do your best. Sorry. But Zach alerted me that there were a few clashes and that there's nothing we could have arranged. That's the problem with this new way of doing the course. In the past, it would have been just a certain day. Got the same problem?
No. Okay. You got the investment management. So you teach them.
I do.
Those are the 2 ones you teach.
They are the 2 ones I teach. Thanks God. Look, investment management tells you how to do it. It talks about fiscal systems, and it's pretty good. How are you? You have grown. You are taller. Yeah. What are you doing?
This unit is scheduled
Because I cannot do it in 13 weeks. Because I'm going to be away. I'm going to be working overseas during the middle months, and the university wanted me. Now, it's your fault because the students' fault, not the students. My rating as a teacher was good. And they did a rearrangement of the units, and they asked me where I can teach them. And I said, yeah, but I would have to do it initially. And I said, yeah. But before it was done by Total from France, and they did it in 1 week. They take in Total. So they're doing something else. And not necessarily teaching a unit anymore, just doing presentations, something. And they say to me, so can you run the unit? This semester we cannot change the name because it's going to be done by April. So you're going to have to go with the same name. Hydrocarbon economy. So I said, how am I going to teach decision making with the hydrocarbon economy title? So I wrote a lecture about. We will change the name as well. We will call it decision making for oil and gas, and it'll go together hand in hand with investment management. You'll see. From tomorrow we start doing decision trees and things. Decision, techniques, decision trees. And it's going to be tough. I hope it doesn't disappoint you. How are you, young one?
Not bad.
This one's all there. Can anyone not find this lecture? This lecture is called Topic 9. You found it? Yeah. Oh, it says, what's the name of the section? Lecture topics, what it's called? Yes, young lady. Let me guess. Are you from Vietnam? I know. Your name and your name as well. A little bit. I kind of distinguish the different countries. I've been here 32 years. Yeah, so I work with a lot of people from all the Asian countries, and I just finished last year a consulting job with a Thai company. Bangchak. They bought Nido Petroleum here. Nido Petroleum had a producing field in Philippines in the Palawan area in the sea. Yeah, there's shell fields very near. Yeah, but sorry, that was not what you wanted to ask me, isn't it?
No, I'm not familiar with this one because my job is I don't use those kinds of stuff, and I just wonder what specific job that we need to have some like decision or risk or uncertainty.
Because we use it a lot. We use it a lot in the oil industry. Yeah. So what is your background? What do you...
My background is chemical engineering,
Yeah.
working in the ruling department.
In the...
Ruling.
What type of work is that involved?
I design the well path, and I design the PHA and recognition.
Is this your first subject, your first semester?
That's my first.
Yeah, okay. The subjects I do are more, it's all about money. Petroleum industry is all about money. We've got to make money, right? So my two subjects are about projects. Measuring projects, management, corporate subjects. They are the only two. All the other subjects are technical.
Yeah. Once I saw the reservoir engineer, he just tried to calculate he just tried to find out the equation factor or something, 1.5, 1.2 or something, and he just finished something. It lost.
It's just that we are going to, when you saw that slide, are you talking about that one? That one? Yeah. That one is, look, it's just because there's some exercise that lend themselves very nicely to be applied in Monte Carlo. Yeah? So this course is not about that. But we're going to use that formula to learn to assess it in a probabilistic manner, to show how the engineers really do it. Because it's not just a one number. It's a whole type of simulation. There's whole ranges, and we use it as an example. So it's a bit surprising. Well, yeah, it is a more corporate subject. And that's because the people at the trenches, like you, have to understand, what's important to be able to have a project. It's not just reservoir engineering. It's not just facilities engineering. It's not just geology. The most important thing is the money side. And now with the oil price that we have now, it is more important that everyone understands, how it happens when all the technical work is done. What happens next? Why do the projects get accepted or not? I had to do a little bit with a big project that was in Vietnam. It was called Dai Hung. Dai Hung, the big bear. It was supposed to be big, but it wasn't. This is 1980s, BHP Petroleum, and then it had been owned by the Russians first, and then they left it. And we took it, but we couldn't make much of it, and then in the end, we almost have to abandon or give it away to. It wasn't Malaysian. It was either Malaysian or Indonesian national oil company. I think it was Petronas.
It's the S project of Chevron, and Chevron sold the project to the.
There you go. And how big?
It's around
10 million
billion USD for total.
cost, money, dollars. Okay.
Yes.
And volumes, and how, what volumes of oil or gas? Well, thank you. Thanks. Thank you. Are we all back? Yeah? Maybe? Okay, we all back now? Yes? Okay. Let's continue. Okay, talk. Now, I've just had a very good question by a student. It says this is an oil and gas engineering, program, and the two units that I do are the more corporate type of units. The ones that have to do with money, right, and with decision making. It's pretty important in terms of what's happening today with oil prices. That everyone has a very good understanding of what happens after the technical bits have been sorted and what is required to make money. It's all about money. Companies are really worried all the time about projects. It's all about projects, get them to fly, get them to build in the most cost-effective way, getting to produced, in the most effective way as well. So it's becoming increasingly important to make decisions based on economics. So hence the shift. This unit was. Anyone did hydrocarbon economy under the old format? Has anyone done? No, of course not. If you're all here, you wouldn't have done hydrogen economy before. No. So it was a bit different. It was a again a set of presentations, and that gave way to either more technical, and that technical would have been perhaps more gas-oriented, although your oil and gas project is a gas project, and I think you can understand why now, especially from the point of view of Australia. But it's really, a shift towards towards valuation, towards the corporate side of things, towards trying to make, everyone aware of what's required after the technical bits, to get projects over the line. What are your projects, the ones that you all create, the ones you all find and help to design and develop and all that? What are your projects going to, what hurdles are your projects going to have to jump over after it leaves the technical realm, for them to become real projects? Okay? That's more or less the flavor of what the university and I myself am trying to do here. So what we're going to talk about is some of the techniques to make decisions, both under risk and mostly under risk, really. You know, it's under the presence of risk and uncertainty. Okay? So let's get on with that. Right. Okay, decision-making concepts. We are in a obviously very risky industry. You know, there's a lot of money gambled almost on the roll of the dice, and there's a very high probability of less than desirable outcomes. We're going to try to understand what we are deciding on. We're going to try to minimize the chance of loss. But let's just talk a little bit about it, you know, to start with. Now, our industry is capital intensive, you know, and it's very uncertain at all stages of the life cycle of the petroleum project. Not just are we going to find oil or gas or not. It's uncertain at every stage. It's different types of uncertainties. Whilst it's being built, whilst it's being produced, and then during all that time we also got the price uncertainties, you know, the commercial uncertainties, and then heaps of other types of uncertainties, sovereignty, you know, country risk, and a few other things. But we try to worry more about the technical and the commercial ones. The expenditure during all of these facets of the project life cycle is significant, but especially so early on, at the exploration and development stages. A fair amount of money is spent exploring now before we even know we have a barrel of oil or even a sniff of gas. The trick is that we hope it's more or less been that when something comes along, when we strike it, when there's a discovery, is of a size that it's going to make up for all the times that we spent money exploring and that have not found any hydrocarbons. Right? It will make up for those costs handsomely. It will pay many times around. That's the hope. So oil and gas is usually a business that can produce very high margins and returns when it's successful. That's why we could try to make it successful. Over time, profits and margins have come under threat due to the increasing cost of finding and developing reserves, and just about the whole, you know, setup and environment of the industry. Adding to the various business risk and uncertainties of the industry, you know, there's great uncertainty on prices alone. Nothing more significant than what's happened in the last 2-3 years. We've just personal experience. You know, we did a consulting gig for a small company. Those that did investment management with me know all about it. We at a small company called Nido Petroleum, which with a small asset in Philippines, in the Palawan area near the Shell assets. We were taken over by a Thailand company, you know, Bangchak. The idea is we're going to go into this very straight line, very straight business, which is oil and gas. We're going to invest a few $100 million, and we're going to go and buy assets, right? We're going to buy producing projects. Just like it was that easy for companies that have projects to just sell them. It doesn't happen that way. So say we're going to supply you with $700 million, you know, for acquisition, and within 2 years we want to be producing 20,000 barrels per day. 20,000 barrels per day. What were we talking about before? Just one LNG project, and that's the equivalent of about 400,000 or 500,000 barrels equivalent a day. This company was trying to build itself to 20,000 barrels a day. It's a different game this day. So one of the first things, you know, we start looking. So we must have looked at, say, 150 projects. The focus was Southeast Asia. That's part of the $12 billion of analysis that I've done that didn't succeed because we didn't acquire one field, right? And mostly is because of the coming off of the oil and gas industry due to the oil prices. It just wrecked the whole way the industry worked. Yeah, of course, prices, you got to continue selling, you got to continue producing and selling. It got to a point in which some assets that we looked at got very close to be selling at a loss. But they can't stop. They've got to continue. You can't just stop a field and wait for the price to go up. I mean, you got people to pay, you got costs, you got a lot of money involved in decisions like that. You've got to continue producing. So there are companies that continue producing at a loss. There's companies that had fields that they had funded on debt, not even on equity. Didn't matter if they funded on equity, but let's say a company that we were targeting, their share of the project, 30% of it, had cost them $90 million US. At current oil prices, at the time we were looking to acquire them, their share of the project was worth $55 million. And it had cost them 90 to get in, all the investment, everything that they had to build, to develop the FPSO and everything. Can't tell you the name because you will identify it as a local one. But that company suddenly faces that they've gone through all the risk of exploring, finding the hydrocarbons, working out, a suitable development case that is going to make sense, that at the oil prices that were on at the time they were doing the analysis and trying to make that decision, worked, was a handsome project, and suddenly they build it, they spend all the money, they are about to extract the first barrel from it, and the oil price goes floor. It's almost like the rug gets pulled from under your feet at the worst possible moment. That's a risk. What should have we done? They done. Analyze this with much lower oil price forecasts? Perhaps. But how low is low? If you go too low, then you can't do business. You don't compete with anyone. You don't get onto anything. So it's pretty difficult. 2 years of effort. We did not acquire one project. We looked at projects everywhere. Malaysia, Indonesia, Vietnam, Thailand, Burma. We even had a look at a couple in Australia, a couple in New Zealand, although they are not Southeast Asia. We started looking at everything after that. So, what we saw also at the time is that there were no transactions in the market in terms of, we saw for about 18 months, we saw zero company changing hands. We saw zero asset being sold from one company to the other one. No one sold the project to anyone. And what was happening? I mean, because the bottom have come up off the market, everyone was waiting, holding. I mean, like, this can't be forever. It's got to get fixed. Well, I mean, I finished that consulting gig almost a year ago, and it still hasn't got fixed. I mean, $50 a barrel is a price that none of the projects that we were looking at would make sense at all. So, look, very funny business at the moment. Exploration wasn't happening. The rigs, an exploration rig would have been $150,000, $200,000, $250,000 a day, right? An exploration program would have cost you X. Well, the rig owners were not coming down either. Then there's no more exploration. Well, the companies don't explore because the price is low, the rig price is high. The industry has been down to a halt for 2.5, 3 years. The signs of stabilization, but it's not great deal of startups, and exploration programs or anything. Still, many geologists are friends of mine, and the twilight of their careers. You know what they're doing? They don't have work at the moment. They're going out to finish studies. I got one that's just booked himself in a PhD, right? Geologist, that I work with in many different companies, on consulting, contracting basis. That's the first bit that gets cut, So people are taking the time to do other things, to cover holes, things that they wanted to do. It's going to recover. It's never going to go to the DZ heights that it used to be. I don't think $100, $120, $130 oil prices there again, but it can be 40 or 50 for too long. I think it's going to be about 70. That will allow business to happen. So, look, decisions are very complex. For company survival and growth, it's crucial to continue to invest aggressively, but decisions must be made prudently. At the moment, we got a problem with decisions. It's the uncertainty of the rules that we have in front of us. It's very taxing. Okay. So why do we need to analyze these decisions of ours? Most of what we do, at least on the corporate side of things, is about allocating resources, to maximize benefit. Resources are limited, but opportunities aren't. There's heaps of opportunities out there. It's just that the resources are limited. We cannot tackle them all. We cannot get into everything. We got to rank. We got to do metrics on these things, and we got to use our money on the best possible ones. So we know that even opportunities are good, not every one of them can be funded. So we've got to find ways, structured approaches, to really decide on the best use and allocation of our resources, which is, it's not a hell of a lot of it. It's a body of techniques called decision analysis, which is used with other things, financial, discounted cash flow, probability, statistics, come to help us now on this issue of decision making. Decision making is just a toolkit of techniques that, if applied consistently and carefully, will allow us to make better techniques, whatever they are, consistent, flowed, apply with some discipline. It's really a future-oriented activity. We wouldn't be talking about decision-making if we knew the future. It all happens because of the uncertainty of the future. It really assists us, the decision-makers, into thinking about complex problems in a structured and systematic way. I have found that by applying decision-making, sometimes it clarifies the problem for me in terms of the roadmap, what am I trying to do, and it changes the view of the view I have of certain problem. It reshapes it. So it's a body of techniques that provides a logical way to incorporate risk and uncertainty into the analysis. Risk and uncertainty cannot be eliminated, but decision analysis can help us understand them better. We try to get more of the good stuff and less of the little old fellow there, right? We cannot do much about resolving or eliminating uncertainty. It's there. What we can do is understanding it better. And when we understand it better, maybe we can generate mitigation strategies, to reduce the impact of the possibility of going wrong, right? But we cannot eliminate it. What's feasible, though, it's quantifying this uncertainty and characterizing the risk, understanding how much is that we could gain or we could lose. Because risk is both positive and negative. It's risk of gaining something and risk of losing something. We are more used to associate risk with bad, with loss. Yes, it is, but it's also, the gain of possible outcomes. Uncertainty and risk applies to all aspects of exploration. This is where we're most interested in using it. Development and production of hydrocarbons, as well to relevant commercial decisions. No doubt, without the student realizing it, risk analysis of oil and gas projects is already being addressed in other subjects for you that perhaps have been already in the system. You might have come across reliability, perhaps, and a few other items in other subjects. I'm not totally privy to everything that's been taught on the other ones, but my suspicion is that it would be so. So, where is risk analysis, and where is this being modeled in some parts of the oil and gas industry? Well, what we've seen from ourselves and our colleagues, using risk analysis, the exploration people, and we are going to do a fair bit of it, is in finding hydrocarbons, and trying to work out whether we drill exploration wells or not based on information we have. The drillers, have used risk analysis to assess problems whilst drilling. Reservoir engineers have assessed, have used the risk analysis models with to assess the productivity of the wells. They have sometimes Monte Carlo models, to come up with low, high, or medium outcomes and curves and productions, forecasts into the future. The gas sales people have used it for supply and demand. The economics people, we use it for cash flow and profitability. Facilities, performance of structures, 30-year projects, 40, 50-year occurrence projects, and so on. Marketing, fluctuation of prices. Production, reliability of systems and equipment. It's got a spot almost everywhere. Not everyone does the same thing the same way, but different types of decision analysis techniques get chosen for different kinds of problems. Depends on the problem. What interests us in project valuation, senior managers would really appreciate, an understanding of all possible outcomes of an investment and its associated risk and uncertainty. Business analysts help them with this requirement, producing available, discrete sensitivity analysis. Now, what is the low case scenario? What is the high case scenario? It's good information. It's traditional. It's happened. But now that we got such a power in our computers, we can do a lot better than that. So these things are useful things, but it does not provide answers to some important questions, such as what is the probability of a positive NPV? What is the likelihood of a monetary loss? For instance, traditionally, we would produce graphs like this, business analysts. Now, we would say the net present value. Is it a mystery to everyone here what the net present value is? I'm not asking here for a deep knowledge of net present value, but do we all understand that net present value is a metric that is associated with what a project is worth? Yeah? With the value of a project, okay? So, value of the project, let's say, whilst we don't get into NPV, let's call it value of a project, right? Plotted against reserves, right? Why do we have to plot it against reserves? Because we don't know what's the reserves volumes that we have. We think, before we drill and before we produce, we think we have X as a base case, most likely case, but it could be as much as on a high, and it could be as little as on a low. So what do? Let's measure it at all those 3 points. Most likely, as little as high as, right? And we throw those 3 volumes into an economic evaluation, and we calculate the value of the project for those 3 levels of volume, right? That's a good graph, we get the low, which is really the 1 point at the very bottom. We see is negative. We see that the project doesn't pay for itself if the volume is 20 million barrels, right? We see that the project is very handsome at about 60 million barrels, but that's just 1 point we calculated, right? It's got a good value. And we see that the value that we think is most likely to happen, which is about 40 million barrels of oil, it's got a positive NPV, it's got a positive value. The project is worth something, right? Great. And then we throw a line between the points. Amazing, eh? It's pure science. That line tells us nothing. What if the manager wants to know what is the possibility of losing money for this project? We can't tell them. We haven't got that measurement. We are assuming that by interpolation, You know, when this line crosses that line, that's roughly going to be the volume that creates, you know, a negative NPV. But what's the probability of it? Well, we don't know what's the probability of occurrence of that value and all the values to the right of it. Because every value, every volume of that amount or higher will obviously produce a positive NPV, or zero or positive NPV. So we would like to know what's the probability of all that segment. How do we know? We don't know. We know that if it's, say, 35 maybe, it's break even. We don't lose and we don't earn anything. But from about 37, 38, 39, 40, we start making money. From 40 up, we continue making money. But what's the probability of all that segment from 35 up? Is that a 50% chance? Management would like to know that. It's a 50% chance of making money, or is it 60, or 72, or something else? We don't have a way of telling them with discrete economic evaluation, unless we start doing points and points and points, and then you have an analyst just to be doing this for a whole year, right? Well, we can do it in 10 minutes with Monte Carlo and with the tools that we have today at our disposal, right? So that is the point. We're going from the traditional, discrete, one-point, wild, basically extrapolation of numbers, and yes, it's better than nothing, but it doesn't give us some of the answers that we would really want to have, right? Okay? So, what we used to do in the past, deterministic. What we did in investment management, deterministic. Right? We would run scenario analysis, minimum, most likely, and maximum. And yes, we would do, tornado diagrams, to analyze the sensitivity of things and all, but all discrete. To create all of these graphs, we had to do actual economic runs at the spreadsheet on the computer, right? And then with pen, write down the value at the end of it, make a table, and populate the table. That would have taken us all day, perhaps, maybe, a bit less, a bit more, I don't know. And then we create those graphs for management. They're better than nothing, but there's many questions that they don't even begin to answer. Okay? So, what kind of techniques, of sensitivity analysis we used to have? Best estimate for a project case, we call that the base case, usually the central point. Scenario analysis, what could be the worst that happens, what would be the mid, what would be the best case. Selection of various cases of specific interest. I mean, we're not sure we can finish the project on time. It may be delayed up to a year. What's the value of that? Well, what's the value of delaying the whole thing by a year? You recalculate the NPV. We may not want to build immediately phase 2 of the project, as is planned. What if we don't build phase 2 and we change the production profile and we only build phase 2 4 years later when we are sure about the production? Well, you run that, another one pointer, another little dot on the map there. But they are very discrete cases, and the likelihood of those cases even occurring is probably 0.00001%. There could be something around, maybe. But of that case occurring, zilch. So sensitivity analysis, decision trees is also discrete, and real options is also discrete. Probabilistic, and this is where our assignment comes into the picture. Has anyone never done any probability on either high school or in their degrees at university? Is anyone totally oblivious to probability? We all have done something. How we all built a histogram, a sample of points, and then we plot it, and then it takes a shape. Okay, so we're not too bad. That's more or less what we need, and with a little bit more science, right? But that's what it's all about, all right? We are going to characterize all the variables that are interested that are interesting in our assessment in a project, for instance, from the economic point of view, we are going to want to characterize the volume of a project as a probability distribution of some kind, a histogram. We are going to want the price to also obey to some sort of distribution, so it can be within a range. The operating cost, the abandonment cost, the capital expenditure, the startup date. We will want all of those perhaps to respond to ranges rather than given values. Very easy to do, very easy to implement in Excel with these add-ins, and then very easy to press the button and add 100,000 runs of these combinations of all of the possibles, done in minutes. And I'm talking here 2 minutes for 100,000 runs. How long does it take an analyst to do 100,000 runs? We've got to hire him when he's about 18, and by the time he retires, maybe he will have done 100,000 runs or something. Well, we take 2 minutes with this. Okay, so it's unprecedented, what we can do now. So the Monte Carlo technique, it's really widely used in the oil and gas, and we are at the forefront. I've been in discussions with my mining counterparts. It's not a blemish, but I've done 2 years in mining. We put a corporate company in Chile, and we went there and tried to apply probabilistics, but the miners are not into it. No, they do a discrete scenario for their things. As I said before, pharmaceuticals use Monte Carlo very, very heavily, and the health industry use it very, very heavily as well. Okay, so many combinations of these relevant contributing variables, the one I was talking, volumes, CapEx, OpEx. Do we know what's CapEx and OpEx? Have I left someone behind there? CapEx, short for capital expenditure, what it costs to build a project. OpEx, operational expenditure, what it costs to operate a project. Okay? Sorry about that, guys. I forget, okay? Those two are going to be variables because we can't be sure we're going to be able to pin it exactly to a value for every year. The volumes, I said, the CapEx, the OpEx, the price. What is more variable than the price? So we might as well have one. What this software does for us, picks one price from the whole distribution that we're giving in, one CapEx, one OpEx, and one whatever other variable we're interested on, and computes the net present value. And you know what? And then it does it again, and then again, and then again, 100,000 times, until we get a cloud of possible net present values out of it, where we can build, it's already built for us, a histogram. And it's live. We can interrogate it, and ask all sorts of things from it. The probability of occurrence can then be computed for managerial questions. We can easily do, these 100,000 passes if we want, with all the combination of variables of an economic model. And yes, there we do have the answers for what's the probability of making a monetary loss. Definitely. What's the probability of a positive NPV? What's the probability of a volume of reserves higher than 32 million barrels? What's the probability of the operating expenditure less than $4 million per annum? You start getting all of that, and senior managers adore it, because they say, okay, I've seen the discrete analysis. I know the base case makes money and that, but I love to know that I got a 92% chances of making money rather than a 63% chances of making money. It's very different. They only got 1 in 10 chances of not making money. And if someone tells them, well, you got a 60% chance of losing money, well, that's 2 in 2.5. Well, 1 in 2.5 chances to, or 2 in 5 to lose money. That's the way managers think. For them, it's a little bit of a bet, a bit of a guess. So what this does, whatever variables we are interested in getting an answer for, we will get the histograms that can be plotted not just on a bell basis, because, I mean, that's fine, but they can also be done cumulative, where we can calculate very easily by just moving a slider in the computer. We can calculate the areas under the curve. It shows them to you. So that is one of the beauties of it. So almost everything we do involves decision making. Decisions involve risk and uncertainty. What is risk and uncertainty? I don't know. I don't know what it is. It's so muddled up. It's used in so many different ways. What I can say is uncertainty. There's more of a consensus on what uncertainty is. Uncertainty is just not knowing something, being uncertain of the possible outcome. But risk, there is much more of an issue on what's risk. Many people think risk is just the negative part of things. But let's just look at the definitions by some, right? Solver. This is also an add-in to spreadsheets, I believe. Yeah, I haven't used it, but Solver says risk is a chance of undesirable outcome to occur. I'm not too sure about it. What does at risk say? This other piece of software that we are going to be used. Well, it says it's treated as one with uncertainty, so it's more or less risk and uncertainty is the same thing. Maybe they go hand in hand, but I don't think they're the same. Paul Neondorp. Who is Paul Neondorp? 1970s, he wrote a book, Decision Analysis for Exploration, became the Bible. 40, almost 50 years later, it continues to be the Bible on decision-making for the exploration and production industry. It's a fascinating book. How the guy came up with all of that, I don't understand. I saw him in Melbourne in the 1980s at a presentation at the Kelvin Club. His book had, the little extra cover that they put on him, and his photograph was at the back. He was not any older than you guys, a young-looking, engineer, right? And there I go in the late 1980s to a dissertation by him. He came from Oklahoma or somewhere, and speaks in front of all of us, and it was chockers because the guy is whatever, and it's this old man, old grey hair, and he must be out of the picture now. He must have gotten off the bus, I think, but it was amazing. He answered every question, that it was put to him, and it was just a delight to listen to him. Continues to be the Bible. Now everyone else quotes him about something, about some of his figures, about some of the decision trees, about some of the dependencies of the probabilities on calculations, as per Paul Neondorp. Well, he says it's the inability to predict future values at the time of the decision. Okay, seems to me uncertainty. Robert McGill, another guy, top consultant in the US, an opportunity for loss. An opportunity. Webster's, this is a dictionary. Chance of injury, damage, or loss. Oxford, another one. Possibility of something dangerous or unpleasant happening. Macquarie Dictionary, exposure to the chance of injury or loss. Industry Practitioner 1, the threat of loss. Industry Practitioner 2, uncertainty of outcomes. Pretty clear, huh? Yep. Okay, so what's the definitions of uncertainty? Solver, an intrinsic feature of some part of nature, future. Great philosophy. At risk, our inability to know what the future will bring. Okay. Paul Neondorp, equivalent to risk. Robert McGill, outcome not certain. Okay. Opportunity for loss, less important. Webster, state of being uncertainty, lack of certainty, doubt. Oxford, not known exactly or not decided. Macquarie, something not definitely or surely known. Industry Practitioner 1, range of possible outcomes. I mean, we don't get anywhere with any of this. So what do we adopt for this course? Okay. Uncertainty, we are going to say probability. Okay? But risk, when we read things from at risk, for instance, is treated as one with uncertainty and that, we're going to say it's the probability but also with consequence, right? So it's more or less what happens if that probability occurs, right? What is the risk? Do we gain? Do we lose? For those of you that have come across the risk matrix, used in project management and other things, hazards analysis in the industry, you can have risk. You can have, say, probabilities of occurrence and consequences that are good. They're usually green. Some ones that they are very bad. They're usually red, and some that lie sort of less in the middle. They're not bad or not good, right? So for uncertainty, we are going to think of probability only, right? And for risk, we're going to think of probability, but coupled with how bad or how good the outcome could be for that probability is what I had to get to in the end, because I don't have an answer for you guys. Okay? Decision analysis stages. Well, there's intelligence, there's design, and there's selection. Should we even be interested on this? These stages above are common to all proposed processes. The above steps appear uninteresting and dull. It's not so. It should be how you tackle your assignment. Okay? So what am I expecting from your assignment? I'll have a chat to each one of you. I'll try to find out which industries you come from. What are you familiar with? And this is going to be an individual project. I want for you to do something that you are familiar with in a Monte Carlo basis. You're a geologist. I'm not going to allow you to use the example we use in class, right? You're going to have to come up with something different. You are a structural engineer. I'd like you to do a Monte Carlo with some structural engineering program. Like failure or will the beams, fit and so on. You'll see that there's many problems around. Electrical engineers, the same sort of thing. Reliability people, the same sort of thing. It'd be good if you all do something that you're comfortable with. Simple. Just pick a phenomena that's governed by equations. Whatever it is, those equations have variables. Well, those are going to be your input variables. I want those input variables to be probability-sized. Does that word even exist? Right? So for those input variables, I want you to propose to me that they are going to be governed by ranges, and that you are going to support that they will be either log normally distributed, triangular distributed, uniformly distributed, whatever. And you're going to have some proof, small proof, because we don't have a lot of time, that you've researched a little bit of literature out there and that suggests that that kind of variable, that kind of phenomena behaves that way, right? Then 4, 5, 6 variables that you're happy with for this equation of this subject that you are familiar with. I want you to run 100,000 passes or whatever it is, generate the outcomes, the results, and do the evaluation of it and what's come out of it, what probabilities are, why would they be suitable, why would they be unsuitable, what would you change, and so on. This is where I ask you, how many of you have done tertiary degrees and that, and you all said yes? We have a master's degree of a top 100 university in the world. We are expected to more or less operate at a certain level. Okay, so don't complicate yourselves massively, but the sooner the better. Let me know what your disciplines of origin are, what you are very familiar with. Propose something simpler to me. And we say, okay, so what do you think will be the variables, the input variables that you would be changing? And say, yep, that looks good, just go ahead, right? And then comes building the model. It shouldn't be more than 4 or 5 lines of Excel, plotting which variables are going to be the inputs, which variables are you going to nominate as outputs, and therefore obtain distributions, result distributions for them that you're then going to evaluate and screen and authorize, and let me know what you think of it, why you think it works, why you think it doesn't work, what would you do different, and so on. It's more or less a professional like assessment of something, right? Not necessarily a wrong or right, but what I want you to do is to get into it, right? To get into it, to think about these things. That's why we're interested in this. Now, intelligence. What I'm mostly, design and selection, I'll leave it mostly to you, right? It's how you build your model, you know, and what you consider are going to be the important answers. But intelligence is where we're going to get a bit better at, okay? Let's talk about this. We got to gather our input. We got to tell the model things about our variables, you know, of the necessary information to successfully perform risk analysis. Some of it may be known completely, certainty, be known partially, bit uncertainty, or not be known at all. We are going to have to make a guess. If the variables exist, although we know nothing at all, we're going to have to make a guess, and hopefully it'll be an educated guess of some kind. This works for Monte Carlo, and this works also for decision trees. I'm talking for both of them. I could have very easily asked you guys to do your assignment on precision tree, right? Or more or less the same way. In fact, no, let's just keep it to our risk. I almost let it go there. But the way you will structure the problem, build your model, and get conclusions and result and validate it is more or less the same. Okay? So, we got to estimate. Are we good estimators? Do we estimate things well? Do we guess well? Do you have a lot of things to guess in your life? I think my electricity account this quarter or these 2 months is going to be about whatever, and I'm always angry. I get it pretty wrong. It's always more. So what do I need to do to get it right? Maybe expand the range. I won't like it because I'm still going to pay a lot of money, but I mean, I'm trying to guess, you see, and I'm trying to get it right. We'll do an exercise on that today. See how good we are. So virtually every input required to perform an assessment of our objective has some degree of uncertainty. There's nothing that is given. Not even the things that are written in contract can all the time be said certain. You know why? Because at some point in time, the supplier of this contracted item can say, no, I need a bit more money. I say, well, but we got a contract. Yes, but the specifications didn't exactly, clarify the whole. This is a little bit extra. It's outside the scope. So not even contractual obligations, you can say that they are certain. Most of us are well educated. I'm sure of that. But are we good estimators? Mm-hmm. Estimating must become one of our key skills. Too much depends on it. Bias, the way we think or feel about things, is a key problem that's always present when we are estimating. We must endeavor to eliminate or minimize it from our estimates. Okay? The importance of estimating properly is directly proportional to the consequence. Remember the risk matrix of our estimation. Let's do an exercise. Yep. All right, let me get out of here. Can you all get a piece of paper, please, and a pen? And you all put your laptops, tablets, telephones down. No peeking, because it'd be very easy to get into the internet and find the answer for what we're going to do. No good. Where is it? Estimation exercise number 1. All right. Okay, what we're going to do, I'm going to ask you for some questions. You are going to guess them, right? You're going to write in the piece of paper the value, the answer that you think applies to the question. And then because you know that it's very difficult to get it right, just give yourselves a range. Yeah? I think that's my answer, but I think it could be between this and between that value. That's all I want. Okay? Like, how old are you? I think you are 24, but you could be between 22 and a half and 26. That's the kind of thing I want. I don't know, but I'm trying to guess. See, I've got some of you, the young guys, you're looking, the girls are all looking at me, that sort of thing. Okay, the boys are, no, the boys are not looking yet.
What is the limit of the ranges?
I'm going to leave it to you. We're going to do another exercise in which we're going to do this. Something that makes you happy and certain that your value is going to be in that range. Okay? Right? All the telephones down.
Can you switch slightly somehow?
Sorry?
Can you switch slightly somehow?
You're
It's air conditioned.
just air conditioning?
It's air conditioned. I think we don't need it.
I think the air conditioning is off.
Yes. You have to
The lights off. Really? I thought it was just those buttons. But that's what they've been in. Well, there's nothing about that here. Laptop, visualizer, iPod. You want the light? I've got no idea. This is the first time I come to this room. Does anyone of you know anything about this one? No, I think it's here. This is the air conditioner. But when you go in, sorry, I thought we wanted something different. Sorry. Okay, slideshow from current slide. First question. What is the surface area of Spain in kilometers, square kilometers? And then just stick a number in, and then give it a bit more and give it a bit less that you feel comfortable. Okay? Comparing with China, you're putting the Chinese, this, Spain is about the same. That's what I would do. I would say that Chile is about 250,000, but it's very long. But what if I got it around a bit? That's the first thing you do. Start associating it with other things. Yeah? It's not as big as Australia. All right? Second one. At what temperature does mercury boil in Celsius? Mercury, on the side of the motor. Let's see. Come on, put you today.
I just know it's a normal temperature.
It's a heavy end, so it must boil much higher than water. Water boils at an end. This is going to be more than that. Right? All right. Number 3. How tall is the Eiffel Tower in meters? I know. What do you want me to do? This is about making it difficult. Our Colombian friend would be very well educated for question number 4 because it's a neighbors with Ecuador. You know, at what altitude above the sea level is Quitos, Plaza Mayor? Quito is the capital of Ecuador. Yeah, Ecuador is reasonably high altitude country. Can't tell you that.
In South Africa.
Yeah. Next to Colombia. Some of the altitudes in Quito are more or less, there are some places in Colombia. Almost. You should know number 5. You should know number 5.
Sometimes
Yeah, it's spot on. Day and month. Yeah. in which year was Confucius born? Who was Confucius? Does anyone know? Who is confused? Confucius, philosopher, Chinese philosopher, but he was also a politician and scholar and something else. You know, I don't have middle name. If I tell you, I will kill you. It's not that difficult, come on. There's no point in looking at your unmade day to see what he or she's got. I'll bring a question from Russia next week. Okay? We're going to do this again. Yeah, but we're going to see if what we learn improves the way we guess. Okay? Not the same questions. Okay? Finished? Yes? Okay. Answers. Answers are Spain, about 506,000 kilometers square. Okay. Who was close? How close? 10,000 square kilometers. So you put like 500? Okay, so I'm going to put here close. I'm going to just do marks, okay? Who else was within 10,000 square kilometers?
1,000 square. 1,000.
You were 1,000 kilometers? What did you put?
1,000 kilometers.
What did you, well, no. What did you guess?
10 to the power 6 kilometers.
How much?
10 to the power 6.
I didn't get that. I could see the number.
1,000 by 1,000.
1,000 by 1,000. So it's 10 to the 6. That's a million. That's a million kilometers. It's a bit bigger. Yeah, kilometers. Who else is near? Who else is between 500 and 510? No one. Who else is between 450 and 560? What did you write? What the hell did you do? Who else is between? Okay, can anyone tell me what he or she has? What do you have? 50,000. My backyard is 50,000. Okay, that's a little too little. Okay, what do you have?
100,000 to 150,000.
Not bad. Anyone went big? You of course, a million.
I went 400 with a range of 100 to 1.2 million.
Okay. Has anyone thought about something when doing it? I mean, okay, Australia is whatever. Try to pin bits of information that you were sure of, and then compare, look alike or whatever. Yeah. What do you compare it
I
with?
compared like the distance between north part and south part of India, how long it is, like 2,000 kilometers, so I thought it should be like half of it.
But it was a little less than that. But that wasn't bad. That wasn't bad. It's deductive. What else? What did you do? 2 million. And you compare it to what? How do you work that?
Russia maybe.
So you compare with Russia as well? Yeah. Are you Russian too? So, okay. How can you be a little bit Russian? Am I a little bit Julian? Yeah, maybe. Right, okay.
But I wonder how yes are close.
Okay. All right, look. So we didn't even get close, did we? In many cases. But we all thought about another country that we could more or less say compare to. When you gave yourself a range, did you get it? Did you get it right? You went within, so you gave your range, you got a range and you got it right. Okay, who else? Stephanie? What do you think of? Western Australia. So
Yeah.
what was your number? 100,000. That's my house and my neighbor's house. So, and then of course the range couldn't be that big to get a range. Anyone else got it within the range at least? The range? Just you. Most of us were Under, too little, or too much? Too little or too much? Okay, both. Alright. So that was not a very good start, huh? Okay. What about the other one? At what temperature does mercury boil in Celsius? 357. The faces of embarrassment are worth a photograph. You know what I mean? What do you do, Sylvanus? What do you put?
150 to 250.
Okay, at least you knew that it had to be more than water. I think we all knew that. Yeah? Did anybody get it right?
My maximum rate is 340.
You got 340. That's not bad. Okay. And so your range would have also been okay.
260 to 340 I got.
Okay, so just outside of the range.
Yeah.
Anyone going within the range? What do you have?
150 to 450.
That's pretty good. The middle would have been what, 300. So that range was pretty wide, huh? Hey, you may have the answer. Right?
I had 100 to 2,000. I think it last first. That would be a bit hot, I think. But it's a wide range. Because I wasn't sure, so that's a good one.
Yeah. But you knew it had to be more than water. Yeah?
You told it.
Water is light. You know, it would boil a lot earlier. Yeah? Who else yes? What about you?
Yeah, about 300.
About 300 as well.
That is metal.
Okay.
Is into worse than aluminum?
So you do aluminum?
Yeah, it's around 4.
What's your background?
Yes.
You're not a metallurgist, are you? Okay. Talking about chemical, the lady here that was telling me before, what was your number? Which one? 120 to 120, okay. Just a little bit more than water, all right, okay. So we've got a couple of things here. We were not even close, apart from one honorable section there or two, but when we did ranges, some of you either got it or almost clipped it. Yeah? Might be a thread there. How tall is the Eiffel Tower? No, we'll put it at 1,000 meters. You did, didn't you?
I got 250.
What do you put?
250.
Okay, that wasn't too bad. That's kind of visible. You know, we can compare it to buildings. We got elements, don't we? Yeah. Anyone got it totally right? 300.
I know that.
How do you know exactly?
Yeah.
How did you know that?
It's from newspaper book.
Who reads the height of the Eiffel Tower? I don't. I am impressed. I'm very impressed. Okay. Anyone else? Spot on or within a range?
Within a range.
What was your range?
300 to 400.
Okay, so just quickly, huh?
280 to 310.
That was perfect. Did you have an idea? Did you think of buildings?
Just kind of like
Right.
comparing buildings.
Yeah. Okay. Apart from the absolute freakish, skill of being here, the other ones had to more or less arrange. But you were lucky, huh? Because it wasn't a wide range that you gave yourself. It's like smallish. Okay. All right. And what about Quito's Plaza Mayor? What's the height in meters?
2,850.
You know that?
No, I didn't know it. I guessed it actually.
You're rubbish in me. I feel the pull. Okay. Wonderful. I mean, what do I do with me and you? You are the two that disprove the whole theory. I'm going to have to expel you from this class, both of you. Don't come next time. All right. And ranges. Who else? Close or within the range?
I got it the range of, I put, so I had no idea where this thing is, so I put 1 meter above sea level to 5,000 meters.
It's 5 million.
Yeah,
Why didn't you put more than 5,000?
sorry.
Why didn't you put more
Well,
than 5,000?
yeah, 5,000, I'm pretty sure it's not on the...
What about 7,000 or 8,000 meters?
Well, yeah,
There's nothing in the world taller than the Everest. So we had a reference there. It couldn't be taller than the Everest.
well, and the blast even at 5,000 is getting a bit much, isn't it? You've seen it, it's there light.
There is a couple of 5,000s in Latin America, and Mount Aconcagua.
But a blast on top of...
No.
yeah.
A blast on top of that mountain? No, it doesn't work that way. Okay, how do we do here?
I guess less. 1,000.
1,000. Okay. Do we Australians, and I say he because I've been here for a long time, are less proclive to get that one right because our tallest anything is 2,200, which is Mount Kosciuszko. So what I said, like, I mean, in other places people exist above that level, you know, almost the whole country. So could that be an issue, perhaps? All right, well, the last one. Confucius. Yes, me. You were totally right. The day and month and time of the day. No, you didn't know that?
I didn't know that.
Okay, so why do you put that one?
It's so ridiculous.
Which one was it?
What, 1,000?
Before Christ one.
Yeah.
Well, that wasn't not bad. I mean, that's why 51 before. Okay, it's 400 years, but it's, I mean, I wouldn't exactly know. Who got it near?
500 to 600 BC.
Perfect. And that's a good range, too.
I never have ideas.
You can put it in.
No, I just put like 28.
What do you put for Confucius? Did you turn behind it?
1,600.
Before Christ?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And you then?
I
Yes.
put
500.
500.
And the range?
I just put 500.
Okay. Have we drawn any conclusion here? Are we starting to see what went wrong and what sort of thing could be done?
Range cannot be so big.
Sorry?
Range cannot be so big.
Well, yeah, the ranges of 7,000 something, they are a little big. But, I mean, you see, what do we do to give the oil price a range? We know that it's going to be maybe 50 or 60, and to be safe, we say, it's going to be from 0 to 120. It's a little bit useless, right? It's not going to help us, yeah? So we got to narrow it, but we can't say the oil price is going to be between 52 and 57. We're going to be out of the range most times, so we've got to try to educate it. We've got to say somewhere between 40 and 80 perhaps, you know? And even that's wide. Well, one of the things that can sort this is work towards lookalikes. You know, try to, and in the industry we can't find them. You know, we can't find lookalikes for the kind of variables that we have to estimate. There is information, you know, we could educate it a bit better. But the one that we cannot escape of is we have to put ranges. And we cannot make the ranges too small. Yeah? Because it's got to be something that is, you know, within the realm of possibilities. Cannot make them too big or not. We're going to do another one either tomorrow or the day after and try to apply that. I'm going to try to give you variables that are a bit more guessable, because these ones are like, I mean, who can possibly get the Eiffel Tower right. And, you know, but things that we can maybe, you know, use as, you know, sameness. You know what I mean? Okay? Now, there's a little bit more, guys, before we go. Maybe a couple more. Thank you for that. Okay, we're going to try to... And also, I am going to bring a physical thing. You know, I'm going to tell you when you see it. You know, it's a bit of a surprise. Okay? So, what else do we have here? So that was the data estimation thing. Okay? What other ways of gathering information do we have? We're probably going to finish a little bit earlier today, okay? Where we have, you know, brainstorming. You know, we used to identify overall risks or risks specific to individual parts of the project. The Delphi sort of technique, it's also called the Delphi Oracle, that works by generating consensus amongst expert practitioners. The Delphi is very interesting. I used it once when I was doing my thesis to become an engineer, and it didn't work because there's a thing I wasn't able to solve. The idea is that the Delphi technique, you know, you ask a number of questions to people that are reasonably related to the field that you are interested on eliciting the information, right? And so it's a questionnaire there. The answers are going to be, like we had here tonight, various and mostly different. But then what you do is you collate a summary of all of the answers, right? And then you feed them back to all your practitioners. The idea is that they somehow reconsider their assessment given all this information that is getting back to them. Because you say your colleagues, without name, your colleagues said X, and he or she fundamented this answer on this. You put the text, you know, thought about this. So they start getting educated a little bit, and you have a second round. So they give you your estimation again now with more information available, right? So allegedly, the answer doesn't change much, the average, and it's just like a funnel that going like this, but occasionally the answer could start changing a little bit, drifting up or drifting down, or whatever. That's the theory. The one I did for, I did at the railways, you know, and it was about assessing the different types of trains, the importance, you know, of cargo, freight, or early morning, you know, runs, and early evening with a super class, you know, passenger ones, first class and second class. And so I got the first round of answers, and I fed them back to every one of the practitioners, and one of them said, no, I don't believe it. I'll stay with my answer. And I didn't want to change it. He said, they are all wrong. Yeah? It's what I'm saying is right. So that threw my whole study out because, you know, it wasn't working. So at the end, I had to leave the guy outside as an outlier. Right? This was itineraries, automatic itinerary computing, you know, sort of deciding algorithm that I was inventing. Well, anyway, so that's what the Delphi Oracle is about. Interviewing. You could use it to obtain information from a wide range of stakeholders, open questions and closed questions, you know, about things that are of importance to the subject that you are trying to work out. Peer review, you know, process of subjecting a document, an idea to the scrutiny of others. Very used, very well known in fields like geology, you know, and they have heaps of peer reviews, you know, to basically join their minds on prospects, you know, and all sorts of geology items. SWOT, you know, strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities and threats, examines the project, you know. Brainstorming, it's the problem is never to get innovatives in your mind, but how to get the old ones out. Well-known generic method for generating group creativity. A group of people work together in a common area of focus, proposal, problem, issue, scenario. The activity has two phases, generation of ideas, evaluation of those ideas. The working mode is one that encourages every participant to put forward ideas which all others can see and no one criticizes. Ideas are grouped, filtered, and if possible, ranked in order of priority, purpose, of acceptability. Has anyone done a brainstorming? Participated? No? It's pretty interesting, you know. I mean, it's a group of people, common people, or from different disciplines, from a project or an initiative you want to do. And the first thing you ask is everyone, you got post-its usually, you know, everyone's got a post-it and a pen. The first thing you ask them is to throw their idea, you know, one word or 2 words or whatever, you know, what aspect is important. Think about anything. No one criticizes anyone. Just think on the board, on the board, on the board. At the end, you end up with like 300 post-its, you know? So then everyone is exhausted. Everyone sits back and says, what have we done? You know? And you start looking at things. You see that some people have coincided. So you know they double up. And you see that things have familiarity with each other. You know, they belong to the same areas, you know, I mean, whatever administrative or a certain perceived risk or some action item or whatever. And so everyone is free to put anything up on the board, whatever occupies their mind about the problem at large. So it gets filtered, it gets grouped, and at the end of these sessions, you know, you end up with pretty clear directives of what sorts of things, in general terms, have to be attacked, and then some of them with a fair bit of detail, what is to be done about them. And, you know, I've done it a couple of times in Woodside, and I thought it was very neat, very useful. Mm-hmm. That's my experience on it. The Delphi method, I think I spoke a little bit about it. It's a consensus method. Consensus amongst a group of experts is reached at the end of a multiple round of surveys administered over a period of time. There's agreement in the industry that Delphi is an expert survey in 2 more rounds at every which the results of the previous ones are given. So you tell them how the thing is going before asking them to vote to give their input again. Participants comment on their own forecasts, comments of others, and appropriateness of the process. And a comment by Abba Ivan says, a consensus means that everyone agrees to say collectively what no one believes individually. Sad. Interviewing, one of the most important methods for gathering info. One-on-one or group interviews are popular. The interviewer can ask open-ended, closed questions, may ask directly or try to elicit information. Interviewees are usually chosen from expert practitioners, stakeholders, team members, management. Interviews can be structured or semi-structured. Prepare well for your interview. You need to obtain as much information as possible. Peer review, also known as refereeing, is the process of subjecting a piece of work or research of ideas to the scrutiny of others. Geology, this is very common. Have you done peer reviews of your geological work? Not yet. Yeah. The Woodside guys, BHP guys, and all of those, every well that comes up for scrutiny, they have a peer review and they fight it out. You know, they are there, you put them inside, you lock them in, you know, with a bit of food and a bit of water, and leave them there for a whole day, you know, to discuss, you know, the geology, you know, and they discuss the porosity, and they discuss this and that. At the end of the day, they are all more attuned with it, right? And they got a super expert of the whole thing that knows how the company works, you know, because the important thing in exploration, especially for prospects, is to rank in a consistent way, in a disciplined way. It's not because this group of geologists thought about the porosity of that prospect was the bee's knees that the company is going to allow it. You know, the company's got a way of doing things, so they usually have 1 or 2 referees that will oversee the whole thing, you know, and bring the group to basically back to the stable, if you want, when it's needed. It's difficult for a practitioner to cover every aspect of a given subject and spot every mistake in a complex piece of work. Requires the availability of experts in the field. Experts must be suitably qualified and must be able to perform impartial review. Impartial, important. Amongst the most common complaints is that it's slow, although it's recognized as a certification of validity. Okay? When a group comes up with a solution that they've all discussed until the cows come home, that solution becomes valid, because they've all ended up basically more or less on board with it. This is Luis Alvarez, a physicist. I got no idea what he created, the super duper particle cannon, or I got no idea. But it says there, in my considered opinion, the peer review system in which proposals rather than proposers are reviewed is the greatest disaster visited upon the scientific community in this century. No group of peers would have approved my building the 72-inch bubble chamber. Even Ernest Lawrence told me he thought I was making a big mistake. He supported me because he knew my track record was good. I've got to find out more about this guy. Anyway, Plato. This is not Confucius. This is from the other lot. This is probably from the Greeks. A good decision is based on knowledge, not on numbers. Sun Tzu is the art of war, isn't it? Yeah, I think. The quality of decision is like the well-timed swoop of a falcon which enables it to strike and destroy its victim. Peter Drucker, now one of the corporate dudes of our age, checking the results of a decision against its expectations shows executives what their strengths are, where they need to improve and where they lack knowledge of information. The same guy said most discussions of decision-making assume that only senior executives make decisions, or that only senior executives' decision matters. This is a dangerous mistake. Then Woody Allen, of course, the more down-to-earth. In my house, I'm the boss. My wife is just a decision-maker. In my house, I'm not even the boss. Isn't it sad, isn't it? Any of you married? A few of you? Think seriously about it, okay? Anyway, recommended reading. I loaded up for you on the website. If you don't have access, do something because it's loaded as it's done. Taking a calculator risk, very interesting reading. Making decisions in the oil and gas industry, very interesting reading as well. Have a good look at those, and please start looking at the probability, primer if you want, because we're going to be using it by Thursday, Friday. Okay? That's all I have for you for today. 20 minutes to go. Perfect. Huh? I promise a question on Russia. I'll check for you. Maybe the 19th. That's what I don't have anything like that. Yeah, I'm good at Sunday. Is that published by the university? Yes. So where is that? Where is that?
It's in my timetable, my schedule.
I'll ask, because I got no idea. I mean, I only got told that I was in the 19th. We will sort. Stephanie! Hey! Good to see you again. Yes. I think it's the 19th. I think it is the 19th.
How am I going to cross-check it?
I will call Zach and ask him, but I mean,
Yeah, okay.
what he told me. Okay.
Thank you.
Good to see you again, really.
Yes, you did.
Yeah.
Did you have a nice summer?
No, I've been writing this course.
Okay.
You're not the only one. You're going to have to do your best.
Okay.
You're going to have to do your best. So what do we got on Tuesday? Let me have a
Well, I
look.
think we've got the decision trees tomorrow. That I've done. So,
And it's very easy to follow.
yeah.
Yeah? We're going to do a few exercises, very easy to follow as well.
Okay.
I mean, someone like you would have a problem, but you're not the only student.
Yeah.
This about one lady told me about the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I wouldn't
And
miss
you're
the
probably
test.
not the only two.
No. If we have a test, though, would it be at the start of the class or at the end?
That's well. Should we have a test tomorrow? Let's leave it for Wednesday then. And we do it about the first 2 days things because testing today's stuff.
Yeah, well, a lot of it was introductory, so,
Yeah.
yeah.
As I said, I mean, a lot of gas stuff that I've seen in Australia was very surprising to me. And,
Yeah, me too.
I mean, we're nothing in
No.
gas, and we're the number 2 exporter in the world.
Yeah. I didn't know that at all.
I didn't know we were that high either.
Yeah.
Amazing. I mean, World Province, the best we've done in oil production is about 450 to 500 a day. You know, in the early 80s perhaps, and mostly from Basrate. But if I start looking at the production of the LNGs and convert it to barrels oil equivalent, we're doing about 3.5 million barrels a day. But it's not going to last long. I mean, we don't have the sort of reserves that Qatar has. But it'll be 50 years. What do we do after that? We just start boiling the water on wood piles again.
Will that pick up? But not that much. That's the thing.
Not to the same level.
No.
No, we're going to have to become a different race. We're going to have to become something different. I'm not going to see it.
Yeah.
You know, probably you, maybe.
As long as it stays okay for my career. And then afterwards I will.
You know what? Even your career has changed because you are going to be oil and gas, aren't you?
Yeah. Well,
See, I mean, oil and gas commanded 30% more than mining
yeah.
during my whole career.
Yeah.
The kind of money I charge in oil and gas, when I speak to my mining friends, I say, gee, it's like 30% more than they charge.
Okay.
And but now we are starting to level.
Yeah. Wow. I spent my summers doing an internship at a sodium cyanide plant.
So you didn't rest.
No. Rest for the week.
We were talking about you. We were with Zach Aman. Yeah, since Stephanie there, she's very aggressive. She's very good.
Oh.
So you got to. Someone think you're very good there.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. Well, you did very well this year in mine. I mean, you are the kind of student that helps me correlate what we are doing. I mean, I had to fail 5 students.
I can't believe that. That's a lot. We
It's
have such a small
five
class.
out of 29.
Yeah.
And it's because they just didn't want to do it.
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
But they're the ones that wouldn't have been at the classes and then they just,
Right. It's the most, in percentage terms, it's the most that I've ever done.
Was it the exam or was it coursework?
A couple of them coursework, and it was just bad.
Yeah,
How can you do just bad?
I know.
And it
And
hurts
doing
me.
masters is
I mean,
such an expensive thing to have to redo.
what is it, more than $4,000 a subject?
So to redo that is costly exercise.
You know, one of them was back in his country and he said, can we do anything? We can't do anything. So I said, we're going to have coffee because he asked me for advice on how to study. You know, and of course, maybe different cultures study differently.
Yeah.
You know, and what he was doing wasn't working here. So I will sit down with him and see. But look, I'm very happy you haven't been invited for this. It's,
That's good.
Are you okay with what we're going to teach? I mean, we changed. I mean, we left the title because the title's going to be changed by April.
Yeah.
So we're going to change it to decision making for next year.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Are you okay with what we're going to be teaching? You know, getting into decision trees and having a look, implementing software. You know, and then Monte Carlo and software as well.
Yeah, I'm really interested in seeing the Monte Carlo. From what you were saying last semester, with how useful it is, I'm interested in that. That would be good.
You can use it and it's so easy.
Yeah.
I mean, I never had a course of it. Just start tinkering with it. Within 15 minutes, you're done.
Yeah.
everything is add-on to Excel.
Yeah.
What did you end up with last year? 80 something or 90? Almost 90.
I think it was 87.
Oh, poor.
I know. I missed out like 3% of getting a 90.
How do you
This
do?
semester.
How do you do on the other subjects?
Similar. Yeah.
We've. What was I going to say to you? I was going to say you allow us to correlate because they say, well, I mean, why did those students not pass? I mean, are we not teaching properly? But then we see all the other students are okay. And we see students like you that are really on the high echelon, you know, and it must have been clear,
Yeah.
you know, and it's just wanting a bit, isn't it?
Yeah, that's funny. What was the average of it in the unit?
Just above 67, it was about 68, 69. So they didn't have to muck around a lot.
Yeah,
Because
but
you know that they would have to lower it.
Yeah.
If it's 70, they would have to adjust the bell
Yeah.
down to 67 and a half average, or
Because
most
it was
likely.
quite high going before the exam, wasn't it? So then,
Yeah.
yeah.
I wasn't expecting the exam. Some people had trouble. Did you not think the exam was easy?
I thought it was good. I thought it was a good exam. Yeah.
But not easy or not difficult?
No, I think it was well said. There's always things that because it's worded differently, or you know.
Was the wording okay? Or was it confusing?
The only
or-
thing that I had a bit of issues with was the last questions. You know, when we had what do you call it? The cash flow. I think some of the questions was worded differently to what we practiced, and that was just I don't know, just confusing.
threw you out a bit?
Yeah, a little bit. But that was everything else was to be expected, like the.
See, I mean, me not being a university lecturer, I mean, I'm not interested on failing or maintaining only certain numbers passing.
Yeah.
I'm here to hopefully get you all to learn the stuff and come up with something doable.
Yeah.
Because what I saw of this last year, it was useless.
Yeah.
It was
not
done.
you though, because we all,
It was-
I found it fine. So
Yeah, well, it was done by a world-class company.
yeah.
Total. No, it's total. It's like having a course on Excel.
Yeah.
But it was just a suite of presentations, you know, the world, demand, world, you know, I mean. And the guys told me, you know, because I spoke to them, I may be doing that next year because they were already hinting me.
Okay.
I said that would be great because that thing is pure. And so I queried and I said, Carlos, it's yeah, you know, and when I went to do the oil and gas project and I showed a little bit of the Monte Carlo thing and I saw you guys went like,
Yeah, that was cool.
yeah, and I sent the message to Zach Aman.
Yeah.
I said, Zach, think about this, but I show the guys some Monte Carlo and there's a course that's screaming to be taught there.
It is.
Right.
Yeah.
So he didn't say anything. A couple of weeks later, he called me and said, Carlos, would you take over Totals? Because the rankings for Total weren't good. And here I am. So, yeah, I like doing this. And the reason for doing it in a short is because both courses are going to be in a short now.
Yeah.
We're going to try to sell them internationally.
Yeah.
And I'm going to try to give myself the chance to also go overseas and do some work if possible. Rather than being here for 13 weeks plus marking and that. And they say, yeah, you know, it's Total did it. So it's fine.
Yeah, I think it's good. I think it's good as well because then at the beginning of semester we don't have a lot going on anyway. So having an
So you'll be
intensive
okay.
at the start is fine. Yeah.
Will you be loading the software yourself? The Palisade software? You didn't hear the part? No, you arrived a little later. The Palisade software that contains at-risk and precision tree and another 5 or 6 pieces of software, you can download free for 15 days.
Oh yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe you can do that for the last 15 days before handing in.
Yeah, I think I'll do that. How
Rather-
much is it? So is it very expensive to buy?
Look, when I bought it, it was 4,000.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I got the academic, which is 2,400, 40% discount.
Right.
but I never paid the yearly fee of $400 or $500 to maintain it for a newer version. So my version is 10 years old, but it still does it. It still does it. Feed the formula, build the tree or whatever.
That's fine.
But the newer ones, you know what they are doing? Decision tree is a discrete thing.
Yeah.
When you put a value on the branches and all that, and it will compute them. It will sweep through the tree and put the added value and the computed, probability for all that path.
Yeah.
But it was discrete value. I haven't tried it, but the newer versions, you can put a probability distribution at the end of a tree.
Oh, wow. That changes everything.
How do they do that?
Wow.
How do they do that?
Yeah.
Right. So that's where we are. So basically at the end of March, soon, within April, I'm free. I'm intending to perhaps go to Chile and do a few things there and come back by September again.
Yeah. Oh, that's good.
Well, things are very lazy here.
Yeah. Not much around.
Nothing's happening. I mean, did you hear the part in which my geologist friend, that I worked with for quite a while, has decided to give up and go and complete his PhD?
Yeah. It's hard.
But it's not hard for young people. We are expensive.
Yeah.
And so yes, to hire consultants at several dollars a day, $3.50 a day.
Yeah, it's a lot of money.
But it's very nice to see you again, Stephanie. Yeah. And look, the lesson tomorrow is not going to be that difficult. Okay. It's totally followable.
Okay.
And I'll probably do the first quiz on Wednesday to cover the 2 days, and then the other one on Friday. After should be okay. I may even end up doing 3. I'm not hell bent on any of this. It's as long as I demonstrate in the exam that they understand, they're likely to pass. Very good. See you on Wednesday then.
I might come for the start tomorrow.
Okay.
Yeah, but Wednesday not a lot.
Okay. Bye. How are we doing, ladies? You guys scared you. I scared you. How are we doing? What are you doing?
Yes.
This is your first semester or you already started? And what's your background?
All that has petroleum engineering.
Are you both petroleum engineers? Okay. Do you think you're ready about something to do in